Welcome along to Donington Park, everybody, for day 2 of the opening weekend of the 2025 GT Cup Championship. Our Donington 100 races coming up for you shortly, a 100-minute race that will include not only driver changes, but also tyre changes and refuelling. Yesterday we had 2 sprint races, so before we look at what's going to go on in the Donington 100, let's look back at yesterday's sprint racing. So we're about to get the 2025 GT Cup season underway here at Donington Park. Darren Kell on pole position, but it looks like Simon Orange has got a good start and is almost wheel to wheel with him. They bang off each other 2 or 3 times. And Mark Smith now is trying to go around the outside of everybody. Is he going to run out of room? He just avoids dipping wheels into the gravel trap. But Simon Orange, through all of that, has picked up the lead of the race from Darren Kell, team owner of Paddock Motorsport. If he enjoys it and goes well, we might see a chunk more of Mark Smith in the championship, which would be really good to see, because he's a quick driver and is slowly getting used to all of the British circuits, having last year, I think, largely travelled from America over to the UK for each round and then got back home. Greg Caton going to have a nibble here up the inside at Redgate Corner on Darren Kell, who squeezes him to the apex. There's contact between the pair. Darren Kell disappears off into the gravel, and I suspect, can the McLaren get going again? And he is. That is very, very good driving from Darren Kell. He didn't just floor the throttle. He's waited for a gap in the traffic. Yes, lots of time lost, but he's still in the race. We've had 2 cars off. I guess that one of them is Rupert Williams in the McLaren Artura, yes, and the other one is Matt Priestwood at the wheel of the Ginetta. You can see in the background of the shot, off goes sideways into the gravel trap Rupert Williams. For Matt Priestwood, he was more sort of straight on going into the gravel trap, but here we go, out comes the safety car. The lights are off on the safety car, so we're going to be able to get things back underway. Remember, Simon Orange had built up a 7.5 second lead almost between himself and Greg Caton's Porsche in second place. He's going to try and see if he can get as close to Simon Orange as possible, but as long as Simon is clean out of Goddard's, he is on for the opening win in the 2025 GT Cup Championship. Simon Orange comes through to claim the win. This is Ray Harris coming under pressure from Patrick Collins, and as an off, and I'm afraid that is Darren Kell. There, up the inside, goes Paul Bailey, and as they come out of the corner, Darren Kell gets a run on him, and then as they start to accelerate their way up the hill, there's a touch between the pair of them. That pitches off Darren Kell into the barriers on the left-hand side of the circuit. Paul Bailey goes off onto the right-hand side of the circuit and also makes contact with the barrier. What can he do in round number 2 of the 2025 GT Cup Championship? The cars make their way out of Goddard's corner. 25 minutes on the clock. Red lights are on now. Greg Caton and Mark Smith on the front row of the grid. And as they accelerate towards the start-finish line, and there's a little bit of contact further back, I think, in the order. The lights go out now, and as they head up towards Redgate Corner, it's not a bad start from Greg Caton, but it's going to be Mark Smith who's going to try and sweep his way around the outside, which he tried in race 1 and got a little bit sideways, but in race 2, as he managed to make it stick, he has. There's a spin further back. Carl's having to avoid stricken Lamborghini of Balsido in the middle of the circuit. There's a little bit of bumping and boring as cars bounce off each other. So Fraser will try and limp that car back in towards the pit lane. And is that a radiator that's gone on his car? It may well be. May well be. And now, 2nd, 3rd and 4th have met the squabbling Ginettas. Patrick Collins and Ray Harris still involved in their own little battle whilst they're being lapped by the quicker GT3 cars. Patrick Collins tries to stay out of harm's way as best he can. Mark Smith goes through. Greg Caton can't. So Simon Orange tries to go round the outside, then meets the Ginetta right ahead of him as they exit the corner. So he has to tuck back behind the Porsche once more. Okay, Simon Orange might be putting you under pressure, but don't yield at this stage. He's got a 10-second penalty. If he gets by, fair enough. But if the McLaren of Simon Orange gets by, the one thing Mark Smith can't afford to do is let the Porsche by, which is Greg Caton, because he has no penalties to worry about at this stage. So it's a busy section of the circuit heading round through Redgate Corner. Oh, that's the Group GTC leader, Graham Tilley. He's had a spin coming out of the Melbourne hairpin. He was leading the group, and round 2 of the 2025 GT Cup Championship goes the way of James Kell, claims the win. Over the start-finish line will come Patrick Collins and Ray Harris, who have been locked together. They're 2 Ginettas for the vast majority of the race. Who's going to finish 2nd on the road? Well, Simon Orange draws himself alongside Mark Smith, but remember the McLaren, the number 67 car, has a 10-second penalty that is going to be issued at the end of this race. So Mark Smith should be able to hang on to 2nd on the road still, regardless of what happens. He comes up towards a checkered flag and will be classified in 2nd place. Simon Orange takes the checkered flag in 3rd, but a 10-second penalty, I'm afraid, is going to drop him down to 4th place, and that will allow the Porsche of Greg Caton to inherit what will be 3rd position. On the grid also joining us this weekend is 4 times British Touring Car Champion Colin Turkington. We caught up with him earlier on today. So Colin, first of all, welcome along to GT Cup here at Donington Park for arguably what's going to be your debut in a GT car.
Yeah, thanks to GT Cup and 24/7 for having me. It was a very last minute opportunity, a phone call I think last Friday. Did I fancy it? And of course I did. Any opportunity to get in a race car, and particularly something as as fast as a Ginetta GT4. But as you say, it is my sort of GT racing debut, so it's I spent yesterday just sort of observing and learning. It's a different dynamic for me. Obviously out on track with quicker cars, that I have to yield to. That's not in my DNA. So really looking forward to today. I will share the car with Patrick Collins. So I will do the second 50-minute stint of the 100-minute feature race. So step into the unknown, but it's really exciting for me.
50 minutes stint, that's a rather long one for somebody that's come from the British Touring Car Championship.
Yeah, that's 2 races really. That's race 1 and 2 put together. So again, the sort of mentality and approach will probably be a little bit different. With touring car, it's elbows out and sort of getting stuck in for that 25 minutes and just going flat out. So the whole idea is to try and get the car home in one piece, and see if it'd be great if we could get a podium today. Patrick had a P3 yesterday in the second race, so the car's running really well, and I get a few laps this morning in free practice just to acclimatise again. Haven't driven the car very much at all. I had 25 minutes on Friday afternoon, so there's probably still more pace in me just getting familiar with the car. But just really excited to get out there again.
And finally, I suppose, with it being a last-minute deal, you haven't had the chance to pick up the phone, have you, to Tom Tingram, because he joined us in GT Cup back in 2020.
He probably wouldn't give me any tips anyhow. he's probably still sees me as the competition. So, the guys here at 24/7 have been super helpful. Give me some data and looking at videos and stuff just to sort of raise my awareness of potentially what I'm in for. So. So just as I say, excited about the opportunity, and let's see if it opens up any more opportunities in the future. That's what I would love.
It'd be great to see you back later on in the season. Good luck to yourself and Patrick today.
Super, thanks very much. Thank you.
So great to catch up with Colin Turkington, our British Touring Car star that joins us on the grid in the GT Cup Championship this weekend. We also caught up with another driver that's on the grid this weekend, Owen Hizzy, who's driving for SVG Motorsport in his Ginetta. Owen, we saw you come out in GT Cup last year at a couple of events. You're in for the full season this year, and what a start to the year. A winning Group GTH yesterday in the second sprint race.
Yeah, exactly. So we're giving it a proper good go this year, especially with the new Evo. Had a bit of winter testing in the winter series, and we did pretty well in that. And yesterday went well, even though we had a bit of damage at the start, where we got caught up in the start, which made it actually one of the hardest sprint races I've ever done, because struggling so much to keep the car in just a straight line, and then it was just managing the gap from there and just praying that the clock went down quite quickly, to be honest.
What was the issue at the start? Was it just some cars reacting to the lights quicker or slower than others?
Possibly, but it looks like that someone checked up, and then it was a chain reaction on the way back, and then I tried to avoid the car in front, and then just clipped it on the front left, which caused quite a bit of damage, and we lost a lot of front end downforce and everything like that. But to come away with the win, that's all right, and we just keep on focusing on the next race.
The next race, of course, is the big one, the Donington 100, the longest ever race we've had in the GT Cup Championship, and refuelling as well to deal with.
Exactly, and it's one of those new things that each team have got to get used to with GT Cup, but I think it's a brilliant move by GT Cup to do this, and I'm looking forward to it because everyone loves a big long endurance race.
It certainly makes it a proper team effort, this race.
Exactly, and that's the thing, is it's a great group effort, especially with us. We got 2 cars, so it's a team game, and let's see what we can do from there.
Well done on yesterday. Good luck today.
Thank you very much. Take care.
So let's have a look at the Donington Park Grand Prix circuit. The cars will head off the start-finish line and up towards the first corner, the right-hander at Redgate Corner. Then it's Hollywood and that plunge down through the twists and the turns of the Craner Curves. To the lowest point, the old hairpin, where the cars then start to climb up through Starkey's Bridge, Swans Curve and the right-hander at McLean's. Tricky corner, Coppice Corner, blind entry, double apex right-hander that feeds you onto the straight and in towards the left and the right flicks at the Fogarty S's. From there, it's the heavy downhill braking area into the Melbourne hairpin. You come back up the hill and into the off-camber exit of Goddard's and over the start-finish line. That is a lap of the Donington Park Grand Prix circuit that, of course, played host to the 1993 European Grand Prix. It's 2.49 miles long in total. About half a mile of that is just the Melbourne hairpin. And it's also quite undulating. The elevation change across the lap is 35.8 metres. It's a real challenge, this circuit, with so many different types of corners and a couple of key corners that it's so important to get off the corner to carry the momentum onto the straight. 12 turns in total. That's the challenge of the Donington Park Grand Prix circuit. So there we go, that sets the scene for round 3 of the GT Cup Championship for 2025. The Donington 100 at its badge, this 100-minute race that is ahead of all of the teams and the drivers and of course our production and commentary team as well. Something different for the drivers to deal with. It brings in a slight element of strategy in some respects, but equally as much, motorsport is very much a team game anyway. So you know, you've got refueling, you've got tyre changes, so all of the team members are under that little bit of extra pressure that they're not used to in the standard 50-minute pit stop races in GT Cup. Now, because it's this 100-minute format, what we've historically seen, if you've watched GT Cup over the years and the sprint races, is that we have a split window. So the cars, say in Group GTO, Group GT3, Group GTC come in, depending on whether it's the Saturday or the Sunday, is the first group to pit, and then the cars in Group GTB, Group GTH, Group GTA come in, again, depending on whether it's a Saturday or Sunday, at a different time. So we have separate split windows, so not everybody's in the pit lane at the same time. The format for this one, the way the regulations work, is that the pit window is between the 50th and the 59th minute of the race. So everybody has, in reality, that window of opportunity to come in and conduct their mandatory pit stops. Driver changes for most, but for some cars in the field, they're going solo. So Mark Smith, who starts on the front row of the grid, driving solo in this one. He's not the only one, because Doc Bush in the number 75 Porsche is going solo. Chris Murphy, former champion in the number 72 BMW, is going solo. So they are going to be doing the full 100-minute themselves. And I was chatting to Chris just over lunch. I caught up with him, and he was saying, he did a 2-hour stint back at Silverstone just a few weeks ago in another championship, and that was fine for him. He dealt with it appropriately. I said, do you have a hydration system? Well, I do, but it's broken in the car, so he's going to just grab a swig of water in the pit stop. Paul Bailey, there we see the Horsepower Racing SBR prepared McLaren 720S GT3, but it runs in Group GTO this weekend. Paul had problems, as you'll have seen on the highlights in yesterday's race. The team have worked tirelessly hard with the support of McLaren Customer Racing as well to get the parts that were required to get that car back out for what was free practice and qualifying earlier on. There were a few small changes that have had to be made to that car as a result of the damage from yesterday. Some of it is around the braking area. They've had to go to a different sort of setting on the brakes as such, which means that David Brabham was tasked with the whole of free practice to make sure that car was where it needed to be for bedding in the new braking system that they needed in that car, and also for adjusting the ABS settings on the car, so that they also had to be tweaked, because they've had to make some changes to the way ideally they would like that car to brake, but they've just not been able to do that. So they are sort of not on the back foot, but they've just had to change a few of the settings. Be interesting to see how that pans its way out. There's a number 30 car. That should be Simon Griffiths, that's safely on board his car, ready to head out into the pit lane. Brent Millage returns to the championship at the wheel of the sister car from Innovation Racing, a new team that joins us this year. Brent, ex-Caterham racer who raced with us in GT Cup pre-Covid. usually always in Ginettas, but has raced Caterhams in the past. And I think I mentioned yesterday, former motorcycle racer some years ago was Brent. His task for the weekend was he just wanted to stay out of trouble and make sure that the car came home in one piece and try and build up the pace and the confidence again as well after the best part of 3 or 4 years outside of the car. One driver that hugely impressed me yesterday was driving the number 10 McLaren, the black car with the pink flashes to it, the American Mark Smith. Brilliant pace from Mark yesterday. He's getting to know the UK circuits that little bit better now. He's got more experience racing the McLaren, and of course he's got another year under his belt with Paddock Racing, so really impressed with him. The number 37 car had issues yesterday. We saw again on the highlights Rupert Williams heading off into the gravel trap and making contact with the barriers down there at the old hairpin, and again in conjunction with McLaren Customer Racing, all the parts have been received that they needed. There was a question mark over one of the parts quite late on in last night. Was it going to get there or not? It has, so that's why that car is out there. So brilliant work done by Jolt Racing, who we saw out racing with us in GT Cup last year, but it's a brand new McLaren Artura that they are out in this year. So you can see the pit lane filling up on the apron with all of the cars. Drivers that will be starting this race already on board. The wheels and tyres are yet to arrive. They'll be at the back of the garages in ovens that will preheat the Pirelli control slick tyres that all of these cars run. And it's a subtly different compound of Pirelli I think we're running for this year, which means that from what I gather it's a slightly softer sidewall on the slick tyre, as Pirelli have introduced this new tyre across a range of different formats, and that slightly softer slick tyre possibly might make the car move around a little bit more, because there'll be a little bit more deformity in the sidewall of the tyre because it is that little bit softer, so it does make the cars move around a little bit more. But the feedback I've heard so far from the drivers is they like the new tyre, so we'll wait and see. And there is Peter Ursig. We saw him do great things yesterday at the wheel of the Audi. He'll be starting this race because as a pro driver Hugo Cook can't, and Hugo Cook will be sharing the car with him. Simon Orange, again, a couple of good results from him yesterday. He won the first race. He dropped off the podium with time penalties issued to him in race number 2 and finished in 4th place, so he'll be starting this race. Simon Orange, he is a former champion, remember, in the GT Cup. He'll be partnered up with his pro driver Marcus Clutton for this particular race, so they'll be hoping for good things. And there is number 247, the 24/7 Motorsport prepared car, Phil Hearn's team. Always turn out a good car. Patrick Collins returning to the championship this year. We've not seen him out for a year or two, and well, he's certainly got a good co-driver that will be taking over that car for part 2 of the race. We bumped into him earlier on. You'll have seen the interview if you turned on at the beginning of the stream. 4 times British Touring Car champion Colin Turkington making arguably his GT debut this weekend. He has tried to race a GT Cup, a GT car before. That was in qualifying for the Silverstone 24 Hours some years ago, but chatting to Colin yesterday, he did say that the car didn't make the start on that occasion, so he's qualified a car for a GT race, but he's never raced one. So, and the feedback again was that, you know, the car, the team, Patrick as a co-driver, brilliant to work with this weekend, and we're certainly hoping, keeping our fingers crossed, that Patrick returns to the championship later on this year, and hopefully we might get Colin back to do a little more co-driving with him, because as was announced, Colin won't be racing in the British Touring Car Championship this season. So there is Paddock Motorsports Mark Smith. In theory it was just one of a couple of race meetings that he'll be joining the GT Cup grid for, but talking to Martin Plowman, who he regularly shares this car with in the British GT Championship, depending on how Mark got on and how successful he was, he may opt to come back and do more than just the longer races that we've got here and at Silverstone as well. Well, on the basis of Mark finished 3rd in the first race yesterday and was 2nd in the second race yesterday and has had brilliant pace, I think that probably ticks the box that we're likely to see a bit more from him than otherwise we would. Number 4, Graham Tilley. Great to see Graham back in the championship. We've seen him racing a mixture of Ginettas and the Mercedes AMG GT4. Well, this is a Lamborghini Super Trofeo spec car that he is out in, and he's sharing again with Will Tregurtha, who we've seen in this championship for a good period of time. Graham was bitterly disappointed with the spin whilst leading Group GTC yesterday. Just had a spin, from what I gather, all of his own accord coming out of the Melbourne hairpin, looped the car round, and that lost him the lead of Group GTC. Another new car that joins us this year as well, Aselli Motorsport, and that is Matt Eddles, who will be starting that car, sharing with Sam Mayer-Lochnan, who we've seen racing in GT Cup in the past in a mixture of GT4 and GT3 spec cars. There's Matt there, there's Sam there with the headset on, smiling away, the Irishman, who first started racing in Toyota MR2s, did Sam Mayer-Lochnan, and is a very busy man now running his own stunt driving company. Big thumbs up from Matt Eddles, say new to the championship. And the great thing is about GT Cup, this is, you know, arguably one of the older cars in the field. It's a GT4 spec Aston Martin, but from some years ago, but it's still eligible. It drops away from Group GTH because it's not a current homologation of car, and instead drops into Group GTA. And Doc Bush is back as well. Keith Bush, the Antipodean, again another former motorcycle racer, is Doc Bush, back at the wheel of his familiar liveried Porsche. And Doc is just one of those happy people. He's the perfect gent driver for GT Cup, massively enthusiastic. If he gets a great result, great, but he's just happy to be out there and absolutely loves his racing. He's a very busy man running his own largely orthopaedic consultancy down in the city in London, in Harley Street, and he is first in the queue at pit lane exit. Second in the queue is another Porsche, but it's the car that runs in Group GTB because it's a slightly older spec Porsche. Doc's is in Group GTC because it's a full current Cup car. The James Cayley car is the one that queues up behind. Then it's Neil Wallace in the SVG Motorsport BMW, followed by what will be Mark Ellman in the SVG Motorsport Ginetta. Next up is Mac Priestwood, another new car to the championship, number 73 Ginetta. Peter Ursig makes his way out. The 73 car Frank Morris, who had a good run and claimed a group win yesterday, is out. Rupert Williams, Matt Eddles is out. Mark Smith will start to venture out onto what is just an exploratory lap. So this is just the lap that gets them from the pit lane and onto the grid. So all of the cars slowly feeding their way out. Andre Borodin in the Greystone GT number 240 McLaren 720S GT3 back out with us for what is just a one-off outing at the moment. He's focusing his efforts on other GT championships this year, but it's good to see Andre back out. We've seen him sharing regularly in GT Cup with Ed Peed over the years. Ollie Webb is another pro driver that regularly shares cars with him in various championships. And I think other than Chris Murphy, who is just getting the BMW rolling now, the former champion Chris, he won the championship at the wheel of the Whitebridge Motorsport Aston Martin when he was partnered up with Adam Hadfield back in 2018. That's how long Chris has been around the championship, but he's not doing the full season with us this year, which is a shame. So number 88 out onto the track, that's Darren Kell. He did the first sprint race yesterday and had troubles with a spin and dropping down through the order, but his son James put that right in the race later on. So it was a spin dropping down through the order and that contact with Paul Bailey towards the end of the race, and then James came out in the spare car, which is what they're using today, and claimed a win in it. And we've seen those two out racing with us before, back in a Mercedes AMG GT4 in the GT Cup Championship a few years ago. But it was Darren who is going to start the car, is in for the full season. James is only doing here and Silverstone, I think, the two 100-minute races. Darren will be on his own for the rest of the year. So the cars all making their way out onto the grid, all with their Pirelli slick tyres on, all fuelled by Sunoco fuel. Is the standard fuel that everybody has to utilise. And because it is the pit stop race, it also means that the number of points are doubled, I think, for this weekend, if memory serves me correctly. There's no success seconds to worry about. Success seconds take place after this one for the next pit stop race that we'll have, which will be down at Brands Hatch, weekend of 17th and 18th of May off the top of my head. He moves pieces of paper. Yeah, it is 17th and 18th of May down at Brands Hatch, the next couple of rounds on the Grand Prix circuit there. Then after Brands Hatch, 17th and 18th of May, we go to Snetterton on the 300 circuit for the first of a couple of visits to Snetterton. That's 7th and 8th of June. Silverstone and the Grand Prix circuit, the other 100-minute race, takes place first weekend in August, 2nd and 3rd. And then it's middle stroke late of September, 20th, 21st of September, Donington Park, back here again for the penultimate racing weekend of the 2025 season, and we conclude the season as we sort of traditionally have done, if I can get the words out, on the 11th and 12th of October. But there's a long, long way to go between now and then. 22 races during the season, which means we've still got 20, including this one that will be coming up very shortly. So Simon Orange comes up onto pole position, qualified the car in a time of 1 minute 26.009, so he was just over half a second quicker than the identical McLaren that sits alongside in the hands of Mark Smith. The third McLaren, in fact, there's an all McLaren front 2 rows, isn't it? Darren Kell did a 1 minute 26.8, and Andre Borodin was very impressive in qualifying, 1 minute 27.0 from him. So top 4 cars separated by not a great deal more than 1 second. So let's go down onto the grid. I think Charlotte Lake has managed to catch up with our pole sitter, Simon Orange.
Simon, how are you feeling for today's race?
Sorry, I can't hear.
How are you feeling for today's race?
Yeah, feeling good. Seems to have the pace. Just got to get through that first corner in the lead and then hopefully away.
And what kind of tactics have you implemented for today for the 100 minutes?
Say that again.
What kind of tactics have you put together for the 100 minutes?
Just neat and tidy, no track limits. Try and get into some clear air and keep my head down.
Amazing. Well, best of luck.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Good to hear from Simon there. He is a double former champion in the GT Cup Championship. First claimed the championship when he was racing back in 2020 with Josh Jackson in a Ginetta G55, but did claim the championship in what he's driving today in reality. Might not be the same chassis, but a McLaren 720S GT3, Orange Racing powered by JMH, the same team. 2022 he was the champion with Michael O'Brien. So always good to hear from Simon Orange. A busy man, really. Has been racing certainly the last few years in British GT, Asian Le Mans Series. He's been a very busy man, and is a very busy businessman. He's just recently, I think, been able to relax a little bit from the business side of things, but equally as much is now focused on the next page of his business life as well, as he starts to no doubt dabble with other things and build other very, very successful companies. Simon Orange. He is, of course, the owner of the Sale Sharks rugby team as well. So he'll, as ever, as the rugby season progresses, be focusing, one eye will be on the racing and the other eye will be firmly on what the rugby team that he owns are doing. So the Hyundai safety car is at the front of the queue. I'll guide you through the grid when they get on the rolling lap. We'll also pick out how long each car has to spend in the pit lane. Stationary period ranges between 150 to 180 seconds, but then you have an 18-second allocation to drive through the pit lane at the pit lane speed limit. Add them all together, depending on whether it's a sporting driver, a pro sporting or a pro, and that gives us the time the car should be in the pit lane from pit in to pit out. Any shorter than that, you've done one of two things: sped down the pit lane, or you've not stopped for the requisite amount of time. And remember, that pit stop includes tyre change, driver change in the case of most cars, and dumping fuel in, which in the case of the Lamborghinis is nearly 100 litres they'll put in. So let me guide you through the grid then. Simon Orange starts from pole position, 198 seconds in the pit lane, and alongside is Mark Smith driving solo, 168 in the pit lane from him. Darren Kell on 188 seconds lines up second, alongside is Andre Borodin, who's got 198 seconds in the pit lane before Ed Peed can take over. It's the same for Peter Ursig, 198 on row number 3, and alongside Ian Campbell starts 188 seconds when he gives way to Fraser Fennick. Bal Sidhu has got 168 seconds in the pit lane, and alongside him is Graham Tilley, who's got 198 seconds in the pit lane. And then it's Paul Bailey, 198 seconds, and alongside James Cayley will start 168 seconds for the father and son pairing. Frank Morris, 168 seconds alongside Archie Clark. Now he's got the pro Tom Canning, so they spend 198 seconds in the pit lane. And then it's Doc Bush driving solo, 168 seconds. And for company, he's got Mark Allman, who is on 188 seconds because he's got a pro sporting driver, Owen Hizzy, sharing with him for part 2 of the race. Chris Murphy, 168 seconds, drives solo alongside 198 seconds for Patrick Collins as he gives way to the pro, Colin Turkington. Row 9, Neil Wallace, 168 seconds, and alongside him is Lewis Tyndall, who will give way to Matt Priestwood. They're on 168 as well, I believe. Row 10 of the grid, Simon Griffiths, 168 seconds, and Matt Eddles, who's got 168 seconds. And the final row of the grid is going to be Rupert Williams, because John Ingram is a pro sporting. They are on 188 seconds in the pit lane, and driving solo also 168 seconds in the pit lane is Brent Millage. So that gives you the starting grid. It also gives you the starting drivers, and it also gives you how long, remember, from braking the beam at pit entry to braking the beam at pit exit, how long each car has. There's a problem already with the Ginetta by the look of things. Now, Mac Priestwood has got, is that smoke or fluid or bodywork dragging on the floor? It might be fiberglass. Something doesn't look right with the back of the car, which makes me think it might be sitting down, and therefore it's the under tray that's fiberglass that's sort of fragmenting and disappearing out the back of the car. So that could, if he can't get the car out of harm's way, create a slightly delayed start. Hopefully we'll be able to roll that car around into the pit lane and not cause a delay, because it looks as though the red lights are on the gantry. We're about to get the Donington 100, round 3 of the GT Cup Championship underway. Good start from Simon Orange. Mark Smith has tried round the outside a few times this weekend. Once it worked, once it didn't, and in a 100-minute race, yeah, let's just calm things down, make sure that we come out of the first corner appropriately. There's a spin for Peter Ursig though. Graham Tilley has to take to the gravel in avoidance, and the Audi is round in the gravel trap. He's going to release the clutch. He's got at least one wheel on the curb, which should help with adhesion, and turning circle on these cars is not ideal. So onto the grass on the opposite side, and yes, down to Melbourne hairpin goes the Ginetta. You can see the suspension's failed on that car, so looks as though that car is in a dangerous place, and unless it can limp its way out of harm's way, that will be a real problem. And also real problems for Simon Griffiths, whose Ginetta is already in the pit lane for Innovation Racing, with drivers looking around the front of it and mechanics. Now, might there have been contact potentially? I don't know between the pair of them, I really don't know, but we are surely going to have a safety car, because Mac Priestwood is stationary in the middle of the circuit. You can see the marks his car has made down the track as it's dragged itself all the way down the exhibition straight, and he's tried his very best to get the car back towards the pit lane, because why would you not? It's a 100-minute race. If it can be repaired, you'll get back out. But unfortunately, he's got to the Melbourne hairpin. He's tried to turn, and with that broken suspension, he's going nowhere, I'm afraid. Simon Griffiths just picking up on some of it. Apologies if there's any colourful language there. You can imagine his frustration, but it does sound as though there was contact from what he was suggesting between Ginetta and Ginetta. So he is very, very upset, as you can imagine. As we say, apologies for any language there. But when you've put your heart and soul into the weekend and it doesn't happen on the formation lap, that is a bitter pill to swallow for everybody. So safety car is out there. Now, with the broken rear suspension on that car, the officials will get the recovery crew out there. They'll have a look at it and deem, are they going to cause any more damage if they drag it out of the way? They might just be able to push it out of the way, which would be hopefully brilliant work as ever by the Donington Park Marshals, and with 5 Marshal power, then they're just able to get that car out of harm's way. And the handy thing about the Melbourne hairpin is that in a moment he'll turn left, and where they come out of the assembly area onto the circuit, as long as they can get enough lock on the car, then they should very quickly get that car out of harm's way. And it might possibly be a single, probably at the most 2 laps behind the safety car before we can get things back underway. Now, the one positive thing for at least one driver in this is Peter Ursig, who of course had that spin in the Audi at the first corner, dropped away from the rest of the pack. Now we're under safety car, he can catch the pack again straight away. He hasn't got to close the gap that would have existed otherwise between himself and everybody he was hunting down. He's right on the back of the pack. Yes, he's still got everybody to overtake, and that's going to take a while, but he's not 20 seconds behind even catching the pack now. He'll have gained all of that, and that will please him. So misfortune for some, big fortune for others. We'll keep abreast of what's going on in the individual groups as well. Simon Orange was the first car in Group GT3 on the grid. Ian Campbell was the first car in Group GTC on the grid. The lights are out on the safety car. Paul Bailey was the first group in Group GTO, first car in Group GTO. The Cayley's Porsche, James Cayley, was the first car in Group GTB. Archie Clark was the first car in Group GTH on the grid, and Neil Wallace in the Beamer was the first car in Group GTA on the grid that we had. So we're about to get this race back underway, and as they head up towards Goddard's, Simon Orange takes a wide sweep through Goddard's to straighten up the exit to get on the power as soon as he possibly can and try and get the good restart, but the American Mark Smith is wise to that and is sitting very much in his Pirelli tyre tracks as they head up towards Redgate Corner. He jinks out from behind. Is he going to have a look? Well, he does, but he's not close enough, so it's still McLaren from McLaren from McLaren, and it's still Simon Orange from Mark Smith from Darren Kell as they charge their way downhill. And it's another McLaren that's there in 4th place, of course, which is Andre Borodin at the wheel of the Greystone GT prepared machine. Ian Campbell leads Group GTC in the early stages for the Cup spec cars that are less than 5 years old. So when I say Cup spec, that can either be Carrera Cup specification, it can be Ferrari Challenge specification. In the case of most of them, it's Lamborghini Super Trofeo specification. And Graham Tilley, after his gravelly moment trying to avoid the spinning Audi, is still trying to thread his way back through the traffic. Neil Wallace, Graham did the right thing, had to jink left, go through the gravel to avoid the car, but lost time. But the Lamborghini is still all in one piece, and had he not have jinked that way, then there would have been contact. Off and into the gravel has gone Rupert Williams at the wheel of the McLaren Artura. Can he get going? No, he can't, I'm afraid. So the Jolt Racing McLaren Artura, a new car to Rupert, his first racing weekend in this car, has not had the best of starts, and with his car stricken there in the gravel, begs the question as to whether that's going to be snatched out of the way under green flag conditions, and i.e. just localised yellow flags, or whether we might need the requirement of a further safety car. So that is now 3 laps completed. Again, brilliant work by the marshals. I think Rupert has just got enough momentum to haul the McLaren Artura out of the gravel trap, and with a bit of rally crossing, over he goes, bounces over the curb, and I think that did cause a very small amount of damage to the front of the McLaren there as he came off the gravel and up onto the red and white painted curb. Just have to have a look at that front right corner of the car potentially, because I just saw some bit of bodywork move there. Yes, it has. It's knocked the headlamp out and it's damaged that front corner, hasn't it? Yes, absolutely. Small amount of damage there, which might just affect the handling, and there's the bit that fell off. I think that's the headlamp out the car that came out. So still under green flag then. Might be a bit of gravel up there at Coppice Corner that people need to be aware of. Hopefully the light damage to the McLaren won't prevent it from carrying on in the race, because there's a long way to go, an hour and a half still of this race to go, and hopefully we'll go green all the way as far as Simon Orange is concerned, because what he would want to do is make sure that he just stays right at the front, tries to build an advantage and try and open the gap so that he hands the car over there into a really handy position for his pro driver Marcus Clutton for part 2 of the race. Group GTO leader Paul Bailey. Hopefully more cars coming out in Group GTO during the course of the season. Richard Chamberlain was on the entry list. He's a full season entry, but Richard just with a small health issue at the moment that's preventing him from racing. So if you're watching, Richard, get well soon. Hope everything goes well for you, and we see you back very soon indeed on the grid. Always great to see his flame-spitting orange Porsche 935 out, but absentee this weekend, I'm afraid. Simon Orange powers his way down through the Craner curves with Mark Smith still very much in his mirrors. Nowhere near close enough because he's a 2nd and a quarter back. Darren Kell having a better run today than he did in yesterday's sprint race, sitting there in 3rd place. Simon Orange in the early stages of this one picks up the fastest lap of the race, 1 minute 29.063. No disrespect to Simon, that is highly unlikely to stand for the rest of the race, because of course we've got the pro drivers to get in part 2 of the race, and Marcus Clutton, his pro, will, I'm sure, look to try and scoop up the extra championship points that would go with the fastest lap in your group. Peter Ursig, after his spin, is still in the Audi trying to carve his way through the order. Peter has been hugely successful in this Audi R8 GT3 Evo over the course of the last few seasons. He's got Graham Tilley ahead of him and Patrick Collins at this stage. Graham Tilley in the Group GTC Lamborghini, Patrick Collins in the Group GTH Ginetta. Patrick Collins will get outgunned by the Lamborghini, which is recovering its way back through the order. Graham Tilley having had to take to the gravel to avoid the very car that's now behind him, Peter Ursig. So here they come, out of the Fogarty S's, down the short straight, which has a slight incline to the start of it and then goes back downhill into the braking area for the Melbourne hairpin. This is the point at which Graham Tilley had his spin yesterday and lost the lead of Group GTC in the 2nd of the 2 sprint races. Now in a straight line, the Lamborghini Super Trofeo arguably might be a little bit quicker than the Audi, because the Audi will run to GT3 homologation, whereas the Lamborghini is in Super Trofeo spec, so it's a quicker car, it's a more powerful car, but it hasn't got the aero of the Audi. So through the corners, Peter Ursig should have the advantage. Down the straight, Graham Tilley, it's not going to be easy to pass. Down through the old hairpin, Paul Bailey in Group GTO, fighting away with James Cayley in Group GTB, fighting away with Frank Morris in Group GTC, so that's an inter-group battle there. McLaren from Porsche from Lamborghini. And as they head up towards McLean's corner, We are now already on to lap number 6 of this race. Who's leading Group GTH in the early stages? Have to look down the order and pick up who's leading in Group GTH. It is Archie Clark that leads Group GTH in the Feathers Motorsport Aston Martin. You just see him in the background of the shot coming out of Coppice Corner. Frank Morris looking for the inside on James Cayley. Can't squeeze the Group GTC Lamborghini through and ahead of the Porsche. Now they're both Cup specification cars, but because the Porsche is older than 5 years, that drops into Group GTB. If it were a newer iteration of Porsche, then it would be a bit like Doc Bush's. It would go into Group GTC. So even if you buy a Cup car, once it gets to a certain age, these Lamborghinis, in reality, that are Group GTC now, will, if the current regulations remain as they are, drop down a group in a few years' time as they become older than 5 years. So over the start-finish line they'll go. Group GTO, Group GTB, Group GTC. The background of the shot is Group GTH, which is the Group GTH leading car of Archie Clark, driver who was racing in Ginetta Juniors last year, partnered up with Tom Canning, who has been racing these GT4 Aston Martins. Well, Tom's what, 21, 22 years of age now? He's been racing GT4 Aston Martins for the best part of 5 or 6 years already. Was very much a young teenager, or mid-teenager, 16 years of age when he first appeared in GT racing, Tom Canning. Good to see him back in the championship. Good to see Feathers Motorsport back in the championship as well. And hopefully we might see James Guess out in that car, because we've seen James driving this car with Tom Canning and Darren Manning on and off for a good couple of seasons, but I think James is busy with business commitments now. So out of Coppice Corner goes one car. In towards the Melbourne hairpin comes the recovering Rupert Williams, who raced all bar, I think, one weekend of racing with us last year. I think there was one he missed because he was away getting married in Las Vegas. Now over the start-finish line, Andre Borodin there in what will be 4th place. Ian Campbell in the Lamborghini coming through shot still continues to lead Group GTC. The second car in Group GTC is Bal Sidhu in the second of the 2 Top Cats Racing Lamborghinis we've got out this weekend. We were scheduled to have 3, but Mark Havers and Jared Waberski picked up a vibration in testing, and that vibration was traced back to the engine, so the sensible thing was to withdraw the car rather than cause a terminal and far more expensive problem with the engine. So a shame that for Mark Havers and Jared Waberski, the South African, who raced in GB3 last year, that they're not able to join us in competition this weekend. Should be back though, for Brands Hatch all being good. So 4th, 5th, 6th all together. The squabble we're looking at there is Paul Bailey, which is the 7th, 8th, 9th place squabble. Paul Bailey under pressure from James Cayley, under pressure from Frank Morris that sits behind, and then further down through the order we can see what's going on for 17th and 18th place, and that will actually be for the lead of Group GTA. Matt Eddles doing a great thing at the wheel of the older Aston Martin, and not that far behind them is Neil Wallace at the wheel of the BMW. So let's just have a quick look back at the replay of how Matt Eddles got the lead of Group GTA. Fired it up the inside of Neil Wallace, was so late and so confident on the brakes, got the car stopped, anchored up and turned into the apex, and as he was there, Neil Wallace was about to turn in and realised, hang on a minute, the Aston's there, better back out of this. So great overtake from Matt Eddles, sharing the car with Sam Mayer-Locknam, and Sam earlier on was saying they're having to drive the wheels off that car because it's one of the older spec cars. You know, that BMW is an old homologated GT4 car, but it's not as old as the Aston Martin, which is quite an early GT4 car in reality, and GT4's moved on enormously. Problems for Graham Tilley. Oh no, the Lamborghini struggling as it comes in towards Goddard's. It's late in the lap, so Graham should be able to get the car back in towards the pit lane, and trundles his way down the pits. Now Graham Tilley's team is right the way down towards pit lane exit end, so he's got the whole of the pit lane to come down as well, but this is very much of course out of the pit stop window, which only opens when we get to the 50-minute mark of the race, so the halfway point in reality. And even coming down the pit lane, that car is nowhere near the pit lane speed limit. You see the board going out from the team, Triple M Racing, and that car trundles into the pit lane and I'm not sure he had a great deal of motive power as he came down the pit lane. So what's the problem with it? First thing is chat to the driver, second thing is take the engine cover off, third thing is be careful with your hands because it's rather warm in there, and then the frustration will build for Graham Tilley. Great start to the weekend for him in the first of the sprint races, but hasn't quite had the roll of the dice since, I'm afraid. Hopefully it might just be a case of Alt Control Delete, reset a few things. The Audi of Peter Ursig is still trying to work his way up through the order after his spin at turn number 1. He's inside the top 10 now, so the next of the targets is going to be the number 63 Lamborghini in the hands of Frank Morris that runs in Group GTC. But he's been bottled up behind him for a while now and hasn't quite fully been able to squeeze his way through. For the lead of the race, there's not a great deal in it either. Less than half a second as they came over the start-finish line last time through. Simon Orange, double former champion, has still got the Paddock Motorsport car in his mirrors, and another problem there for Chris Murphy in the Woodridge Motorsport BMW E46. So that's former champion in strife. So the leaders together. So I've been really impressed with Mark Smith this weekend. The driver of the day yesterday was Archie Clark. Mark Smith must have been, whilst he's not a full season entry, knocking on the door of receiving that. And are we going to see Frank Thomas here squeeze his way through and past James Cayley at the wheel of the Porsche? He's trying. He's not quite going to get there though. So Paul Bailey in 7th, James Cayley 8th, Frank Morris 9th, Peter Ursig 10th all together. So it's Group GTO, Group GTB, Group GTC, Group GT3, all in separate groups. Chris Murphy has ground to a halt in the pit lane. He hasn't even managed to get to his pit box, so that does suggest that that car was really struggling with something. And again, to go out so early on in the race is very disappointing for him. Hopefully the guys and girls at Woodbridge Motorsport can get that car sorted and back out. So up towards Redgate Corner. We've already completed 10 laps in this race with 83 minutes to go. Down through the Craner curves goes the quartet of cars fighting over 7th through to the final place inside the top 10. Peter Ursig has already picked off Frank Morris on this lap, so that was up at Redgate Corner. He's about to pick off James Cayley, who I think is going to put up too much of an effort to try and fight for position, because that's a GT3 car that's able to squeeze his way through. So it's always going to be a struggle to try and keep Peter Ursig behind. And when he's in a different group, what's the point? You know, you're focused on making sure that you're at the sharp end of your group, and by doing so, that's exactly what they need. And Graham Tilley's out the car, I'm afraid. Will Tregearth are about to close the door, and for the hugely experienced Graham Tilley, who can trace his motor racing roots back to the 1970s and Formula Ford, I'm afraid that's it. Paul Bailey also letting Peter Ursig go through, again for him, having lost a few points with a non-finish yesterday. Well, I think Paul Bailey was classified, but I think he picked up a 60-second penalty for his involvement in the incident with Darren Kell. But again, you know, no point a Group GTO car fighting away with a Group GT3 car. Let it through, because Paul Bailey is still on exactly the same amount of championship points as he would have been had he tried to keep the Audi behind. Woodbridge Motorsport are going to work on the BMW, but Chris is out of the car as well. Oh, that's a real shame. I mean, I'm hoping we've got Dan Mason and Joe Hudson, one or other, down there in the pit lane to maybe grab a word with a few of the drivers to understand what's been the problem for them. It's always difficult to try and approach a driver when they are disappointed having just retired from the race, but it's equally useful to understand what the problem was. So down through the Craner curves, James Cayley is having a busy old race, isn't he? Because Frank Morris is not going away. Out of the old hairpin, starting to climb back uphill towards Schwantz curve, onto the brakes at McLean's corner. Difficult corner as well, McLean's, because you're still almost finishing off the left-hand turn at Schwantz whilst you're trying to get on the brakes and downshift a gear to pitch the car in towards the right-hander at McLean's corner, which is quite a quick corner still, McLean's. And then out of Coppice, has the Lamborghini got the legs on the Porsche this time through? Is James Cayley going to let Frank Morris go through? Well, he hasn't done on previous laps, and he's not going to on this one either. So they might be relatively new to the championship. James Cayley and his son Bill, who takes over for part 2 of the race. They only did one meeting with us last year, which was Silverstone, because they were very much focused on racing in the Porsche Club GB Championship, but have committed to the full season this year and have thoroughly enjoyed themselves, including picking up a group win in one of the races, which was the second of the sprint races yesterday. So 80 minutes to go. Being pushed back into the garage is Graham Tilley, and that is a big old shame for Triple M Motorsport. Here's our Group GTH leader, still going the way of Archie Clark at the moment, Group GTH. So this is running just outside of the top 10. Group GTH is for those cars that comply with current GT4 homologation. So this is a car that you could see racing either in GT Cup in Group GTH, it could race in British GT in Group GT4, in GT4 class, it could race in the European GT4 Championship, and many of the other GT4 categories that exist globally. And he at the moment is leading that group from Mark Ellman's number 99 Ginetta in second place, and third in that group at the moment is Patrick Collins in the 24/7 Motorsport Ginetta, car number 247. This little trio, having been passed by Peter Ursig, it'll be interesting to see how much Peter has disappeared up the road now at the wheel of his Audi, but Paul Bailey, James Cayley and Frank Morris all seem to have similar pace to each other. I think Frank Morris is probably a little bit quicker, but James is just able to keep the Porsche where he wants it to be, to hang on to the place. So is he going to be able to hang on to it still as they head up towards Goddard's? Frank Morris almost had the nose of the Lamborghini fully alongside and ahead, but can't quite manage to do so still. So the order still remains the same. So whilst we still concentrate on this battle for 8th, 9th and 10th, let's go down to the pit lane where I think Joe Hudson has managed to catch up with one or two drivers.
Yes, thanks Mark. I'm down here with Graham Tilley, and Graham, I mean, it's so disappointing to see you out of the car this early. Can you just talk us through what the issue was?
Thank you very much for your kind words. We think it's a clutch or a gearbox. The car was going okay, but when I came out of the first hairpin, there was a bang, and I lost all drive. The engine was still running, but there was no drive. So the team have had a quick look, but it's broken. It was unfortunate that I only just escaped the spinner on the first lap as well. Unfortunately, that happened to me yesterday, and then the Audi spun, and I had to go onto the kitty litter to avoid him. But at least we did. So basically, the car's in one piece. We can fix mechanical gremlins, but as I heard Ian say, it is a new car to us. And we've done what we can to get it, race worthy. But clearly, the clutch or the gearbox, something's let go. So anyway, it's just what it is. It's better than crashing, and I'm disappointed, of course, but we'll live to fight another day.
Oh, well, sorry to hear about that, Graham. Hopefully, you see you back out at Brands Hatch.
I hope so. Yes, it's my favourite circuit, Brand. So, one of my favourite circuits. So hopefully, we'll be a bit nearer the front.
Thanks, Graham.
Thanks, Joe, as well, and I'm sure it won't be the final drive that we bump into and have a chat to at some point, because, of course, once we get through the pit stops, there'll be drivers that have jumped out of the car that will have stories to tell. So, yeah, third in group in the first race yesterday, second in the group in the second race yesterday, despite the spin, but still a smile on his face, Graham Tilley. He's been around motorsport long enough to know that, yeah, you have some good weekends, and some weekends just doesn't quite happen for you. Simon Orange now involved in the back marker lappery as he goes past the car of Archie Clark, the Feathers Motorsport Group GTH leading Aston Martin. The gap between himself and Mark Smith was just hovering over 2 seconds at the start of that lap. And Mark Smith put in a couple of really good sectors as well. He was absolute best in 2 of the 3 sectors on that previous lap and set his best individual lap of the race so far, 1 minute 27.882. That's still about 3/10 shy of the overall fastest lap of the race, which is still going the way of the race leader Simon Orange. In the meantime, the squabble of the trio that we were concentrating on, 8th, 9th and 10th. Paul Bailey has sort of escaped the clutches of James Cayley to a degree, but the Porsche is still, holding up's the wrong word to use, the Porsche of James Cayley is still able to keep Frank Morris behind him. Frank will be trying, absolutely, but James Cayley, despite the fact that he's in a different group, he could let the Lamborghini go through and it wouldn't affect the points he's scoring, but he's having a brilliant fight with him, and why should he? If he's happy that he's running the pace that he can and the Lamborghini can't get by, well, that's one of those things. He'll stick in ninth, and Frank Morris, as frustrating as he may or may not be, will have to remain in 10th for the moment. Long way to go in this one still. We've still got an hour and a quarter to go. We've still got Darren Kell in 3rd place, so it's still a McLaren 1, 2, 3, 4 at the moment, as the 3rd place car comes down into the braking area for the Melbourne hairpin. He was about 21 seconds behind at the start of this lap, and I think might have fallen a little bit further back by the end of it. I think we can go back down into the pit lane where Joe has got another driver he can chat to.
Yep, I'm down here with Chris Murphy, who's unfortunately his BMW's in the garage at the moment. Chris, can you just talk us through what's happened to the car?
Well, I'd done a few laps. I thought I'd come in for a cup of tea, to be honest with you. So they made me a cup of tea, and here we are. Some biscuits. That'll be nice.
I mean, that can't be. I'm sure you'd have loved to have got stuck into the 100-minute race. Is there a mechanical issue?
Yeah, the drive shaft broke, unfortunately. So that's game over for the moment. The lads are going to try and put a drive shaft in it so we can go out and do some running for a bit of fun. But race is obviously done.
Oh, well, hopefully we'll see you back out later in the race, hopefully.
Yep, you will do, hopefully.
Thanks, Joe. Good work. And yeah, sorry to hear about that with our former champion, Chris Murphy, the 2018 champion, already in a little bit of strife. Now here's Frank Morris. He's taken the opportunity, as the race leader is trying to lap him, to sneak his way finally past James Cayley. So he's got through and ahead of the Porsche. He's now got the race leader Simon Orange right behind him, and I think Simon might just have to wait till the exit of Goddard's to get the move done and place a lap on the car that's running inside the top 10. But there's contact between the pair of them. James Cayley has to take to the grass in avoidance. Frank Morris is spun around, and has that caused damage to the McLaren? Well, I'm not sure it has, other than some light damage to the front left-hand side. It's certainly caused problems and issues for Frank Morris, because his car is still pointing backwards, and there's a puncture. There's a front left-hand puncture for Simon Orange, so he's got to limp that car round a full lap of the Donington Park Grand Prix circuit. Now, quite exactly how they came together, I'm not sure. I thought Simon would have just sort of waited until the exit of the corner, but maybe apex speed just caught him out there. He was expecting maybe the Lamborghini to get a bit quicker off the corner, and Frank Morris didn't. I'm not portioning blame one way or the other, that's for race control to do, but I just thought that might just wait a split second longer until he got to the exit of the corner, and that has affected both cars in the race. It's put Mark Smith, of course, in the Paddock Motorsport car into the lead of the race, and Frank Morris is still stricken backwards on the exit of Goddard's, which our fantastic Donington marshals are cantering towards at the moment. And I'll have a quick chat to the driver, and hopefully I could just see the engine fired back up there. It's probably a bit of heat soak that just stopped that engine firing back up. So Simon Orange is limping the car round. He's about to be passed by Darren Kell on the exit of Coppice Corner. So Darren waits until the exit, and off has gone Patrick Collins into the gravel down at the old hairpin. Not sure what caused that, but Patrick Collins was running well in Group GTH, in 12th place overall, 3rd in the group. But something has happened there down at the old hairpin. Now, was that a mistake? Was that getting caught out with another car? I can't see any signs of any fluid coming out of the McLaren, as though there's maybe coolant or something being dropped, but you never know. So there's damage actually to both front corners, isn't there, of the McLaren? You can see damage on the right-hand side and the left-hand side as well. So Simon Orange is limping his way back into the pit lane. Let's have a quick look at Patrick Collins. Bal Sidhu behind him. They come down in towards the old hairpin. Patrick Collins on the brakes, trying to turn in towards the old hairpin, and Bal Sidhu just makes contact with the right rear quarter of Patrick Collins, and Lamborghini making contact with Ginetta, puts Ginetta into gravel, I'm afraid. So they should hopefully be able to snatch that car out of harm's way. If they do snatch it out of harm's way, then he should, I would have thought, in this race be able to drive back round to the pit lane and continue in it. Certainly no damage to it, and I'd have to say it probably wasn't his fault, Patrick. It was just Bal got caught out a little bit. Simon Orange has finally made it back into the pit lane. Now, on the basis of the 70 minutes to go, this cannot count as the mandatory pit stop. The pit window is not open, so all of the time lost on circuit needs to be added to the time that will be lost on track. So there'll be no doubt a change of tyre as a bare minimum, inspection of damage, requirement for the odd little bit of gaffer tape here and there. You can see where there's a bite taken out of that front right hand corner. Jason Hughes, who runs JMH Automotive, on hand to assess damage, and direct the mechanics as appropriate. Telehandler on its way to try and sort out the car of Patrick Collins. And let's just have a quick look at exactly what happened to Simon Orange. Well, here he comes. Frank Morris takes the opportunity to dive up the inside of James Cayley and finally get past the Porsche that he's been stuck behind for quite some while. Simon Orange comes up towards Goddard's, and the Group GT3 car catching the Lamborghini. He's not close enough going into Goddard's. Simon Orange just seems to get on the throttle that little bit earlier, and there was a slight gap there, but as he was on the throttle, the Lamborghini wasn't, and the two of them come together, I'm afraid. So Simon will be disappointed with that. I would imagine that Frank Morris will be less than pleased, because he was going about his own business, and for whatever reason there was a bit of a miscommunication between the two drivers. So Patrick Collins being snatched out of harm's way. Disappointment for him and for Colin Turkington. You can see the damage there to the car and the tyre and the wheel rim of Simon Orange. As ever, the Pirelli mechanics and engineers, I should say, on hand to assess the damage. I'll take a photograph of the barcode on the tyre as well, because all tyres are individually barcoded, because you are limited to the amount of tyres you can utilise in GT Cup, and they will on occasions inspect the damage to see what's caused the puncture. With that one, it's pretty obvious it's what's caused the puncture, the contact. So Mark Smith now leads and has a very, very handy advantage in the lead of the race between himself and Darren Kell in second place. Repairs affected to the Orange Racing powered by JMH McLaren. So it's orange and green racing now with the gaffer tape that's on the front, powered by JMH. New Pirelli tyre bolted on and off. We just saw Rupert Williams there. That looked like, yeah, problems again for the McLaren Artura. Now there's damage to the rear there. That was the same area that was damaged yesterday on the McLaren, the right rear. Now, is that just a little bit of bodywork that's caught where they've repaired it and it's flicked off, or was that a separate incident for Rupert Williams there? Either way, we've now got localised yellows on the top of Hollywood. So just as we sort out one small issue out on circuit, there's another small issue to deal with. The two Aston Martins coming together. We're talking about the development of GT4. Casing example, GT4 Aston Martin, older homologation ahead of current homologated newer GT4 Vantage Aston Martin, and you can just see the evolution of things like the rear wing on it. You know, a much taller, more efficient rear wing that's going to push the car down into the surface a little bit more. It's a little more slippery, and that's just the outside bits that you can see. Imagine what's gone on underneath the skin of the Aston Martin to increase the performance. And the GT4 cars nowadays are lapping probably quicker than the very first iteration of GT3 cars some 15 years ago. Just going to show how motorsport has moved on. So Rupert Williams walking away from the stricken McLaren Artura. Looks as though his day is done. So we've lost a few cars early on in this one, which is a bit of a shame. Of course, we lost Graham Tilley, we lost Chris Murphy in the race, we lost Patrick Collins for the moment. Hopefully we'll be able to get going. Even really before the race got underway at the start, we lost Mac Priestwick and we lost Simon Griffiths as well on contact. What we gather happened between them on the formation lap. So the lead advantage is a big one now, because it's 43 seconds. Patrick Collins has got going, that's good news. So the 24/7 Motorsports Ginetta back in the race. He's lost a chunk of time and has now dropped down to 5 laps off the lead now, and 18th overall when it was 12th. Still see all the gravel coming out of the front of the car. But Patrick will want to try and stay off the racing line as much as he can to get as much gravel out as he can, but he needs to stay out there for at least another 16 minutes at the moment. And just having a look, there's something dragging on the ground, is there? Yeah, there is. Yeah, there's something dragging on the ground. I think where the contact was made, just see those little small orange sparks underneath. Now that might attract the attention of the officials. So just see the sparks. I think it's a little bit of metal that's just dropped down from where the Lamborghini of Balsidou knocked into the side of the Ginetta and put him in the gravel. And those little sparks could just draw the attention of the officials, potentially. Hope not, because if you can hang out for another 15 minutes, he could then come into the pits when the window's open. Doc Bush in the number 75 Group GTC Porsche is now running third in the group in the Team Parker Racing prepared car. He's running inside the top 12, 11th place overall. He's dropped off the lead lap. Simon Orange is also now off the lead lap, still with the fastest lap of the race, but that car is now running in 12th position, and that's going to put him something like 5th in Group GT3 now. See the amount of bits of gravel also that have been strewn around the circuit as a result of the extraction out of the gravel trap of Patrick Collins' car. And how quick was that for Woodbridge Motorsport? They've got Chris Murphy back out. Didn't seem 5 minutes ago that we were chatting to him. His crash helmet was off, his overalls was slightly zipped down, and now all of a sudden it's sort of, you know, we've got the drive shaft done. Crash helmet, balaclava back on, Chris, out you go. So time lost for Chris Murphy, 14 laps off the lead, but brilliant work by Woodbridge Motorsport to get the car back out as quickly as they have done. So it's, as Chris said, just a bit of fun now, a bit of a test session, put some miles on the car, check that everything is good, and it just seemed really strange that the drive shaft went late on in the race. Not the first couple of laps, midway through. Stop-go penalty for Simon Orange for causing a collision is the decision from race control. So that was when he got into the back of Frank Morris, who is back out there and circulating in 13th place overall. So I think just as the marshals got to him, you could just see a little telltale sign of the engine being fired back into life. So I think it probably just was heat soak on that car that prevented Frank from getting going even quicker. And once the engine temperature had just come down that little bit, then the engine fired again and off he went, but the time was already lost at that point, I'm afraid. No indication yet regarding time penalty for Balsidou, and as soon as I say it, yes, car number 16, Balsidou, stop-go penalty for causing a collision. That was the collision that put into the gravel trap Patrick Collins, and that was one I thought would come at some point. So Bal is a very good driver, and that was Bal would be the first to hold his hand up and apologise, and for that one it was a genuine mistake from him. There was no malice in that one at all. Same with Simon Orange, there was no malice in it. It's just not a misunderstanding, but just a miscalculation of where you were, where the braking point was, and where the car was around you and where it would be. So Mark Smith leads the way. Darren Kelly in the number 88 McLaren is in second position, but is a long way adrift of the race leader. However, for Darren Kell, he's got to keep pushing as much as possible, because yes, he's a good chunk of time behind Mark Smith, the race leader, who's just about to thread his way past Peter Ersig's car. So that's now placing a lap on the car that's in 6th position. So a GT3 car laps a GT3 car with 62.5 minutes to go, but Darren Kell has to keep pressing on. Mark Smith leads the race, but he's driving solo. He is a sporting driver, an AM if you want to call it that, which means that he only stops for the minimum amount of time in the pit stops. When Darren Kell comes in, he hands over to his son James Kell, who is classed as a pro sporting driver, or you could argue they're like a silver graded driver. So they stop actually for 20 seconds longer than the race leader will do. Now, arguably James Kell should be quicker in part 2 of the race, as he's a pro sporting driver, than the sporting driver Mark Smith. So that gap should close back up again. But are they going to be able to overcome the deficit they've already got, plus the extra deficit of 20 seconds that's going to exist in the pit stops? We'll have to find out. Traffic in the meantime for our race leader to deal with. Dives through and past Neil Wallace. He's about to go through and past Chris Murphy's car. There's no yellow flags at the top of Hollywood anymore, because Rupert Williams' car has been recovered from where it came to rest after his, what I can only assume was maybe a mechanical issue for his car. Peter Ersig is the next to deal with the SVG Motorsport BMW, and then queuing up also to try and get through and past it is going to be Mark Ellman, who is running in the GT4 Ginetta in 10th place overall now, second in Group GTH. So he goes through, tries to go through and past the Group GTA BMW. And into the pit lane. Looks as though we might have back out. Maybe one of the cars had problems. So yeah, looks as though suited and booted and ready to head back out. Innovation Racing. So that Simon Griffiths, who was bitterly disappointed based on the body language and what we heard after that contact on the formation lap. Yes, they might be 40 minutes late getting into this race because they retired on, in reality, what was the end of the formation lap, but so they are going to get some miles on the car. But for the driver that's getting in, at best they're only going to get 19 minutes of racing, because that's when the pit window would close, and you've got to do your driver change in that period of time, even though you've been sat in the pit lane going nowhere for 40 minutes. Those are the regulations. So the cars just sort of spreading themselves out a little bit in this stage of the race. The closest battle we've got is probably Peter Ursig and Bal Sidhu, but there's 8.5 seconds between them, and Peter Ursig is lapping quicker, so that's only going to extend ever further. For the meantime, for Bal Sidhu, he's more focused on dealing with the traffic that he needs to contend with, which will be Mark Ellman's Ginetta. We are already now 40 minutes into this race, so 1 hour to go. In another 10 minutes time, we'll be at the point at which we would usually start one of our pit stop races. So the pit window will open in another 9.5 minutes time, and you can pretty much bet your bottom dollar for those that are sharing the car with either a pro sporting driver or a pro, they'll be in at the front end of the window. Get the pro in the seat as soon as you can, because then you've got your quicker driver in for as long as you possibly can. For those where there's no huge difference in terms of the driver grading or the pace between, it'll be interesting to see, for instance, when Ian Campbell comes in the Group GTC leading Lamborghini, the number 23 car, to hand it to Fraser Fenwick. They are of a similar pace. When will they come in? Bal Sidhu, when's he going to come in to hand it over to George Jackson? Because again, their driver grading's the same. And it's the same with the likes of the Group GTB leading Porsche. James Cayley, when will he come in to hand over to some Bill Cayley? Because again, they are of a very similar pace. So they've got sort of that 9 minutes to utilise as they wish. Well, we're at the end of March, but that's not a hare, that's a rabbit. And as long as it stays there, all is good. That's it. Keep going left, my friend. That's it. And hopefully you'll still be around at Easter. So up towards Coppice Corner, Andre Borodin has still been hanging on to third position in this race. He has placed a lap on the car that is behind him, which is Frank Morris, because of course Frank Morris had that off. So I think there's actually probably 2 or 3 laps between those two cars now, potentially. Andre Borodin having a really good run here and has kept his nose clean. So he's a busy man, Andre Borodin. If he's not racing cars, and he's playing polo, and not just in the UK playing polo, goes over to tournaments over in the States and other countries as well. He's about to make his way out of Goddard's and over the start-finish line, and Andre's been part of the Greystone GT fold for a good number of years now, since he first appeared racing cars in the UK. Running in third position, and I think he's still just on the lead lap at the moment. Chris Murphy, as we say, back out there in the Woodbridge Motorsport car, about to be gobbled up by Bal Sidhu at the wheel of the Lamborghini Huracan Super Trofeo spec car, the Trade Nation backed car that he shares with George Jackson, while having raced in Porsches in other endurance series in the UK last year. Really first appeared on the scene, as far as I can remember, Bal racing in Ginettas. I'm not sure whether he came through the Ginetta Racing Drivers Club, but he certainly raced Ginetta G40s for a period of time. And it does look as though Innovation Racing are nearly ready now. They've sorted what would be, I would guess, front left suspension problems on the number 30 car, so hopefully they can get Simon Griffiths out for at least a short period of time. But even if they push him to the back end of the window, he's probably only going to get 15 minutes of racing before the pit window would close. So get him out there now, he get 15 minutes in, and he's got to come back in then and hand the car over to Ray Harris for part 2 of the race, providing all is well, of course. 50-second advantage now for our race leader, Mark Smith. The Skechers backed Paddock Motorsport McLaren, which looks fantastic in its black and day-glow pink livery. Mark last year was very much commuting from his home in America across the Atlantic to race in the UK whenever he was out. This year, I think business commitments and location allow him to base himself far more in the UK, so there's less travel involved, which means he's probably far less jet lagged than otherwise he would be. And of course he's got an extra year of learning the car, the tracks, the team under his belt, and well, it's all coming good at the moment, but still, and we're not even halfway through this race yet. And what effect is fatigue going to have? I'm not sure what the longest stint he's ever done will be, but he'll have done 2 hours by the end of this one if he sees the checkered flag. Good news for innovation. Brilliant work by the team. Simon Griffiths lights the rears up, and finally the number 30 Ginetta is about to turn its first racing laps in the Donington 100. And he comes out right in the middle of a pack of cars, but is sensible enough to just use his mirrors. Any chance of a result is gone, but at least let's get some mileage on the car, check all is well, and maybe we might be crumbs however many laps they are adrift now. So what are they? The race leader has completed now 29 laps, so they might be 29 laps adrift, but at least we can turn a few laps, have a bit of fun out there, and hopefully hand the car over to Ray Harris and bring it back with not a further scratch on it. So run you down through the order then. Pit window will be opening in about 4.5 minutes. It's number 10 Mark Smith that leads the way, and that's a Group GT3 car. Second is Darren Kell, number 88, another Group GT3 car, as the top 3 are. Third is number 240 Andre Borodin, and fourth, that's the leading Group GTC car, which is Ian Campbell. It's back to Group GT3 for 5th place, which is number 9 Peter Ursig. And then in 6th place, it's number 16, Bal Sidhu in Group GTC. Paul Bailey is the Group GTO leader, number 28 in 7th place. 8th place is the Group GTB leading car, James Cayley at the wheel of the Porsche. 9th place is Archie Clark, the leading car in Group GTH, and completing the top 10 is number 67, which is Simon Orange in Group GT3. A squeal of tyres, and Andre Borodin is round, and that looks like that's the exit of McLean's corner, potentially, where he's had the problem. It is the exit of McLean's. He'll be able to get the car back round and pointing in the right direction once more. He was in 3rd overall, and well, he'll have certainly lost 3rd overall. Has he dropped to 4th, or did Peter Ursig also get through in the Audi? And he might have dropped possibly even down into 5th place. We'll have to wait and see. But for Andre Borodin, all had been going beautifully well, and then I'm sure just probably a slight mistake, and car rotates round. Thankfully, only just into the gravel. He's able to dig the car back out and will continue, but that's, I think, dropped him off the overall podium now, and is now promoted up into 3rd place. What will be Ian Campbell in the leading Group GTC Lamborghini. And just before we cut to the shot of Andre Borodin, we could see that Ian Campbell's co-driver, Fraser Fennick, was getting suited and booted and ready to jump on board when the call is given. Fraser, who made his debut in GT Cup last year, racing for Top Cats Racing, finished 2nd in the championship, and really was on the pace from the immediate weekend, considering he'd come out of Mazda MX-5 racing, and A, had never raced a car on slicks, B, had never raced anything as powerful as a Lamborghini, and had never raced a GT car. So he really was a star last year, Fraser Fennick, and I think himself and Ian Campbell are a strong looking pairing from the outside this year, but they didn't have much luck yesterday. Mark Hellman sliding the Ginetta around just ahead of our 2nd place car of Darren Kell. This Ginetta claimed a win in the 2nd sprint race yesterday when it was in the hands of the pro sporting driver Owen Hizzy. Well, it is at the moment running 2nd in Group GTH. So it comes over the start-finish line now. It is 2 laps off the lead, but still on the same lap as the Group GTH leader. David Brabham's ready as well to head on board. Le Mans racer, Le Mans winner. Of course, Formula 1 as well, David Brabham, in what was that awful weekend of racing at Imola, where he was partnered up with the late Roland Ratzenberger in the Simtech team at the time. But always good to see David out, and hasn't been feeling 100% recently. He flew back to Australia. He was telling me earlier on today, flew back to Australia to watch the Grand Prix and picked up some sort of bug. It wasn't a chest bug as such, it was more of just something horrible going on in the head area. And he said he went to the Grand Prix the first day, just didn't feel well enough to go the second day. He felt really, really poorly. Bearing in mind the Australian Grand Prix was only a week or 2 ago. He's still not quite fully recovered from that, he was telling me earlier on, but that's outside of the car. Once he's inside the car, the old David Brabham will be back. You can absolutely guarantee that. So more and more drivers getting ready, including James Kell, who is doing just this weekend with us and the Silverstone 100 weekend. His commitments racing in GT World Challenge Europe and the Intercontinental GT Challenge prevent him from doing any further rounds of GT Cup at the moment, whereas his father in the number 88 car is in for the full season. So there's a lot of solo driving to be done in weekends for Darren Kell, who'll get some serious seat time this year, and he's going well now. 55 seconds off the leader Mark Smith in what is their spare car, remember. They tested both cars on Friday, both this green and orange one and the naked black carbon fibre one. They used the black carbon fibre one because they deemed that to be probably the better two of the cars on the back-to-back test on Friday, but of course that was damaged in the first sprint race of the weekend, so it's this car then that they've utilised yesterday, which did claim a win in the hands of James Kell, father Darren, who's done a chunk of racing in Mazda MX-5, he's been in 750 Motor Club as well as in the GT4 Mercedes we saw them out in GT Cup a couple of seasons ago. It's the latest evolution of the McLaren as well, the 720S, which was released at the beginning of last season, the season before, and into the pits as the pit window has now opened. We've got less than 50 minutes to go, so Ian Campbell into the pit lane, Fraser Fenwick jumps on board. We've also got Andre Borodin in to give way to Ed Peed. Archie Clark is in to hand over to Tom Canning. Peter Ursig comes down the pit lane to hand over to Hugo Cook. The BMW is in, so that's Neil Wallace ready to give way to Ian Astley. So the cars all parking at 45 degrees. The teams will have to push the cars back into the working lane and then, or the acceleration deceleration lane, before then the cars can be then back in the control of the driver, so they're not parking parallel because of the constraints. And in comes Darren Kell as well, so the second place car right at pit lane entry end comes into the pit lane. Refueling taking place, and remember this is new, not just for the drivers and for GT Cup as a championship, this is new for a lot of these teams who have not experienced live refueling before. The engine has to be turned off whilst they're refueling, the driver has to be out of the car whilst they refuel. Into the pit lane comes Patrick Collins, and 4 times British Touring Car champion Colin Turkington is about to A, do his longest ever stint in a race car, and B, make his GT racing debut as well. So drivers have to get back behind the line. Only so many team members allowed to work on the car during the pit stops as well. Matt Eddles comes in, ready to hand over to Sam Mayer-Loughnan. And Colin Turkington ready with the seat insert to take up the 247 Ginetta. Brent Millage also comes into the pit lane, so that's the other Innovation Racing Ginetta. The first one being the number 30 car of Simon Griffiths, which was in strife, and no doubt the team will try and leave Simon out for as long as they can to try and, after the problems with that car on the formation lap, equalise the driving time between Simon and Ray Harris, who will take over. Haven't as yet seen Simon Orange come into the pit lane, so he's still pressing on an empty circuit, seeing what he can do, and the answer as to what he can do suggests a new fastest lap, because that's exactly what Simon Orange has done. Less cars out on track, and Simon Orange, brand new fastest lap of the race, 1 minute 27.066 from him. So as soon as he's got some totally clear air, there we go, that's what he can do. But Marcus Clutton will shortly, in the next 9 minutes, be taking over that car. So through the Fogarty S's, Mark Smith has now completed 35 laps in this race. He has just come into the pits though, so here comes our race leader down the pit lane. Fraser Fenwick leaves the pit lane, Ian Astley leaves the pit lane, having taken over from Ian Campbell and Neil Wallace respectively. Remember, there's this minimum amount of time as well that needs to happen. So out of the car comes Mark Smith, has to stand back behind the garage. You can see in the vented fuel churns, it's a dry brake system on these refueling systems on the car, so there's no chance of a great deal of fuel spillage at all. And you can see, because it is a vented system, see just how quickly it can dump in what is 25 litres of fuel in each one of those, I believe. So in has gone the second, this is the third one going in, and all of this in reality, if you can hit the minimum time from when Mark Smith broke the beam at pit lane entry to when he breaks it pit lane exit, 168 seconds, and that includes 3 churns of fuel going in, the driver getting out of the car before those churns go in, the churns going in themselves, the driver getting back in, and potentially a change of tyres as well, all within 168 seconds as an absolute minimum. So back out onto circuit has gone the number 88 McLaren. Remember, that will now be James Kell that is on board that car. Colin Turkington heads out onto the circuit in the 24/7 Motorsport Ginetta. Bill Cayley has now taken over the number 80 Porsche, and Sam Mayer-Loughnane has now taken over the Aston Martin, which will be a car that will be hoping it can feature towards the sharpish end still of Group GT at the end of it, because it was leading Group GT-A in the hands of Matt Eddles in the early stages of this race and up until that pit window. So Colin Turkington, first lap behind the wheel of the 24/7 Motorsport Ginetta. Phil Hearn and the team. David Brabham now has jumped on board the number 28 McLaren. Brent Millage is about to be passed by David Brabham. Brent, of course, driving solo, so no doubt for him. Out of the car, refuel, glug of water, try and cool down a little bit, and in for a second stint. And got a feel for Brent Millage driving solo. It's not an easy thing to do, 2 hours in what is a fully sealed box, the car, with all of the heating going on and that heat soak inside it. But of course Brent has been out of motor racing for a couple of years, so you know that's tough. That's tough. And of course, you know, no disrespect to Brent, but he's not in the first flush of youth. Another driver that's driving solo, Doc Bush. And again, Doc is another one of the slightly older drivers we've got in the field. This championship very firmly aimed at the gentleman driver, so it does attract some drivers that are probably into their 60s and into their 70s in the case of Graham Tilley. I'm sure he won't mind me saying that. Mark Smith, in the meantime, pressing on in the lead of the race. Now, there's still a couple of cars that haven't come in as yet. Bal Sidhu has not as yet come in at the wheel of the number 16 Lamborghini, so that is now back on the same lap as Mark Smith, the race leader, but hasn't pitted as yet. We haven't seen Simon Orange come in as yet to hand over to Marcus Clutton. I don't think that car has been in as yet. But what we have started to see now is the pro drivers, as I said would be the case, starting to set some blistering times, not least of which is number 9. Peter Ursig is out of the Audi. He's handed it over to Hugo Cook. Hugo Cook's first flying lap. Guess what? New fastest lap. 1 minute 26.736 from him, and that's problems, and that's an engine problem, I think, for Sam Mayer-Loughnane. A big puff of smoke from the Ocelli Motorsport Aston Martin. Now the smoke has stopped all of a sudden, and what was that? He's got his indicator on. Sam was as aware of it as we all were, and he certainly eased his pace, but there's no obvious signs of that smoke coming out of the car anymore. But that is a big cause for concern for the driver, and I'm sure the team as well, who'll be watching on. Right, there it is again. And a huge plume of smoke again as he comes out of the Fogarty S's, and this time it is not really going away. And you can see, you can see the oil, and I think he realised then he's dropping oil, and almost, as he tried to pull off the circuit, spun, I think, on what was his own oil, because that seemed as though the car sort of got to an angle you wouldn't have expected it to. So Sam Mayer-Loughnane's driving time did not last long, I'm afraid. It's only probably his second lap behind the wheel of that car, and something has given up on it. Bal Sidhu is in, so he's about to hand the car over to TCR driver, former TCR driver George Jackson. They're just having a quick word with each other. Chris Murphy is in the pit lane. I think Simon Orange has also just dived into the pit lane as well, so Orange, powered by JMH, will be going to work refueling that car and getting it ready for Marcus Clutton, who will take over. The fastest lap of the race that we mentioned had gone the way of Hugo Cook has now been bettered by James Kell. 1 minute 26.687 from James Kell. James Pickford, briefly a British touring car driver, takes over the number 63 Lamborghini. He was the Seat Cupra champion, was James Pickford, and got a drive in the Seat Toledo, as it would have been at the time, sharing with Jason Plato in the BTCC as a result of that, which was the same way Rob Huff started really as a touring car driver, won the Seat Cupra championship and then got the free drive, went into
British Touring Car Championship, and then from there, as far as Rob Huff is concerned, the rest is history, isn't it? With World Touring Car Championship wins and racing out in the Swedish Touring Car Championship as a champion out there as well. So 40 minutes of the race to go. We'll just wait for all of the pit stops to have cycled through before I run you down through the order, because they're still going to shuffle at the moment. So George Jackson, who's just about to take over the number 16 Lamborghini, showing as second, but I think by the time we've cycled through the pit stops, that car will drop back down, probably down towards top 6, top 8, something like that. So we'll wait for another lap or two before we fully work our way through the order. What I can tell you is that now the pros have jumped on board. Yeah, we're seeing those quicker lap times come in, as was always going to be the case. James Kell is not a pro, he's classed as a pro sporting driver. So whereas in other championships you might see that we use the FIA driver rating classifications, gold, silver, bronze and platinum, in the GT Cup, the equivalence, if it's a sporting driver, you could argue it's a bronze. Not strictly true, but you could argue it's a bronze. If it's a pro sporting driver, you could argue it's a silver, and if it's a pro, then they're either gold or platinum, if you want to compare it to the FIA rankings as such. So back down pit lane goes George Jackson. Up towards Coppice goes David Brabham. Be nice to see the Brabham BT62 back out at some point that Paul Bailey owns. He has a very nice collection of supercars and hypercars, and the Brabham BT62 being one of several in the stable. But the car has had some mechanical woes, particularly around the engine department when we've seen it racing in GT Cup, and I think the decision was taken by Paul and the team that, you know, let's get this right. We've had a few goes and it hasn't quite worked, so they've sort of thrown away what they had been doing in the nicest possible way, thrown away the rule book of how they were going to run the car and how the engines were going to be built, and are now seeking a new solution when it comes to the engine, and that is in build at the moment, and hopefully will make an appearance later on in the year. Is me hoping more than anything else. So I haven't spoken to Paul directly this weekend, but I'm sure the aspiration will be, if they can get that car back out, it'd be great to see us out on circuit. Not only does it look good, but it sounds fantastic as well. So into the pit lane once more. Hopefully this is for the mandatory stop this time. We've got Simon Griffiths giving way to Ray Harris. That's the number 30 Innovation Racing car that lost so much time with the contact on the formation lap. George Jackson, now he's on board the number 16 Lamborghini, will be looking to thread his way further up through the order. We've had a new fastest lap of the race that's come in, back to Hugo Cook once more, because James Kell briefly had the fastest lap of the race. 1 minute 26.507 now is the fastest lap of the race that we've had, but it's still number 10 Mark Smith that leads the way and has a very handy advantage, really. Pick up on exactly what the advantage is at the end of this lap, and we'll also run you down through the order at the end of this lap, because everybody has now completed their pit stops. The only person who is still on an out lap after the pit stop is Marcus Clutton, having taken over from Simon Orange. So next lap through, we get a true indication post-pit window as to where everybody is. So there is Hugo Cook over the start-finish line, having set the fastest lap of the race last time through, as we say. The PS Racing Audi R8. I think I mentioned yesterday, such a shame that Audi Sport has sort of finished its time in contemporary GT3 racing. Audi hugely successful in GT3 over the years, not least of which with the likes of Santalock Racing, and the last of the Audi R8 GT3 spec cars delivered to customers at the tail end of 2024. So production of the R8 and Audi's top flight factory teams as such, all now a thing of the past, I'm afraid, but still a very competitive and good looking and fantastic sounding car, the R8. Flash of the lights from Marcus Clutton, just to forewarn Ray Harris that he's coming by. James Cayley is the next target that he will need to deal with, and say at the end of this lap, that's when we'll then get a full indication as to what the order looks like, because there will still be a little bit of shuffling on the left hand side of your screen until every car comes back over the start finish line next time through. So have we seen? Yes, I think we have. That Lamborghini, I think, has been back into the pits again. It's just showing as being back on another out lap. Well, Balsidou came in and did a drive-through penalty. That would be once through the pit stops. The second stop would have been its mandatory stop, but that car is showing as being on an outlap and has now done 3 stops. So I think that Lamborghini has been back in, and I'm not entirely sure why at the moment. Let me just have a quick look and see whether there's any indication. Car number 16 causing a collision stop-go penalty. Car number 16's causing a stop-go collision. Right, pit lane speeding. So there we go, just popped up on the screen now. So pit lane speeding, so drive-through penalty. So that's why it's now had the 3rd stop. So let me run you down through the order then and give you the way that things stand with 35 minutes to go. All of the pit stops now completed. Number 10, Mark Smith leads the race and leads Group GT3 in the Paddock Motorsport McLaren. This car, number 88, James Kell, is second at the moment, and third is the Group GTC leading car, which is the number 23 Lamborghini, now in the hands of Fraser Fenwick. Fourth is number 9, the Audi of Hugo Cook. Fifth place is number 240, which is Ed Peed behind the wheel of the McLaren. And sixth, I'll just give you that at the moment, should be the car that's just come back out of the pit lane after its pit lane speeding penalty, George Jackson, number 16 in the Lamborghini. I'll give you the rest. I'll also pick up the rest of the group leaders after we've gone down to the pit lane.
I'm down here in the pit lane with Ian Campbell. Ian, you brought the car in, first in GTC and 4th overall. How's the opening stint?
Yeah, it was good fun actually. I didn't really want to get out of the car. Obviously turn 1, always interesting. Had one of the GT3 Audis spin in front of me, and I didn't know whether he was going to come back across me, so I thought it was one of those moments, put your foot down and go, hope you come out the other side. But yeah, no, I really enjoyed the stint. Plenty of action as normal in GT Cup. Plenty of stuff on the track as well, gravel, oil, all the usual bits. But yeah, good fun.
And first weekend in the Lamborghini with the Top Cats team, how you found the car and the team?
Yeah, the team are uber friendly. Everyone knows Top Cats in the GT Cup paddock. They made me feel welcome. The car, it's a little bit different to what I've been driving, if I'm honest. I've been in McLarens for the last 4 or 5 years. So to come into a Lambo, it's all a bit point and push, I guess, really. But they got the car set up really well. They know the Lamborghini really well, so they've given me a good car. My job's just to bring it home so that Fraser can do his bit, I guess.
And I was going to say, you mentioned Fraser, obviously he did so well last season. He must be a really great person to learn from when you're learning the Lamborghini too.
Yeah, I think, experience-wise, probably I've got more experience than Fraser in terms of car time and seat time. But Fraser's just such quick, I call him a kiddie, but only because I'm so old. But he's a quick lad. There is bits to learn from him. I learn from him all the time. It's probably about trust in the car more than anything, under braking and things like that. But it is a car that likes to get a little bit lively on exit. So he's taught me a few things, but my job's just to do my bit. Hopefully get him in the car in a safe position and let him do the rest, I guess.
Oh, perfect. Thanks, Ian. Thanks for your time, and Mark, back up to you.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, thanks, Joe and Ian Campbell. I've got to pick hairs with you there. I disagree. You're not an old man. 1973 was a very good year to be born. That's all I'll say. With the same age. So Fraser Fenwick at the wheel of his car heads out of Coppice Corner and down the straight in towards the braking area for the Fogarty exit. I've given you the top 6 as we carry on through the top 10 at this stage. Number 67, Marcus Clutton, is 7th overall at this stage. 8th place overall is the leading car in Group GTO. That's the number 28 McLaren of David Brabham. 9th place, it's a leading car in Group GTB. That's now Bill Cayley that's behind the wheel. And if I give you the top 10, that also includes then the winner, or the leader I should say, in Group GTH, which is now Tom Canning behind the wheel of the Feathers Motorsport number 82 Aston Martin. The only other group leader that's not inside the top 10 now is the leader of Group GTA, and that's the number 24 car that's in the hands of Ian Astley. So I'm afraid I think the other cars in Group GTA have all suffered issues at this stage, including, of course, Sam Mayer-Lachlan, who had the engine woes cause the Aselli Motorsports Aston Martin to expire whilst it was leading that group not so long ago. So just over half an hour of the race to go. Mark Smith with a very comfortable lead still at this stage. He is on lap 44 at the moment. Only now just going on to lap 44 goes James Kell. So it's the best part of probably 3/4 of a lap advantage that our race leader will have. That's going to equate to, what, somewhere between 50 seconds, something like that. 45, 50 seconds, we'll wait and see. 49 is the answer, so wasn't far away. So Mark Smith can afford really now, and I'm sure it's exactly what he's receiving in his ear, the information from team manager, I'm sure, for this weekend, Martin Plowman, is just pace yourself now. If you hit these deltas, then with 30 minutes to go, you can afford to give up, you know, a second to a second and a half a lap nearly to James Kell. So as long as his lap times are roughly where they need him to be, then he should be okay. And in answer to that, how much slower was he than James Kell on the last lap? Second and a half. So yeah, he's probably just hitting the deltas he needs to at this stage. No need to overdrive the car. If you need to push a little bit more later on, do so, but for the moment, just give up a little bit of time. You know, you can take that time through the traffic. So down through the Craner curves, that's Tom Canning, who is our leader of Group GTH at the moment. The Feathers Motorsport car has largely been in the lead of the group since the start. It qualified on pole position in the group. It was 12th quickest overall in qualifying, but qualified on pole in its group nearly 1.2 seconds quicker than the Mark Ellman and Owen Hizzy number 99 SVG Motorsport Ginetta, and that is the car that at the moment maintains inside the top 10. So that's Tom Canning driving the car. Let's go down to the pit lane, because I think Joe has got hold of Archie Clark, who did such a good job in that very car in stage 1 of the race.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, I am down here with Archie Clark, and Archie, you've just got out of the Aston Martin after your first endurance stint. How have you found the car?
I think it was awesome. At the start we had a lot of fuel, so it was heavy, but then throughout the race the tyres got older but the car got lighter, so it was like we had to adapt it, and I really enjoyed driving.
And you know, how you found the multi-class race and first weekend in the GT Cup? I mean, it's a big step up. How have you found everything?
Absolutely loved it. It's awesome. Definitely want to do some more.
Now, obviously Tom's in the car now. I mean, how good's Tom been as a mentor to you, learning the Aston Martin?
Tom's awesome, so he's just out there doing this thing now, hopefully continue to pull a gap.
Oh no, perfect, thanks Archie, we'll let you get back to the race, and hopefully it's a good result.
Yeah, it certainly looks as though they're on for a good result. They've got quite an advantage in Group GTH at the moment, so they're running in 10th position. They're on lap number 43 at the moment. We haven't seen Owen Hizzy come over the start-finish line to start that lap as yet. We've got more penalties, I'm afraid, being issued, and it is a drive-through penalty for pit lane speeding for car number 16. So I actually think that the two penalties they've received, looking back through the data, I thought the first one was pit lane speeding, but I think they've had 2 pit lane visits for incidents out on circuit, and that pit lane visit is for speeding on circuits. That's now 4 trips through the pit lane, including the mandatory pit stop for George Jackson and Bal Sidhu respectively, and that has meant that they are probably now dropped outside of the top 6, yet they're 7th, and they might actually have now dropped almost towards 9th place potentially. We'll wait and see at the end of this lap, because it will have cost them, I think, 1 further place. So this is for position. Fraser Fenwick just being overtaken by Hugo Cook. The next car that's going to queue up behind him is Marcus Clutton at the wheel of the Orange Racing, powered by JMH McLaren. Now this is trying to get a lap back on that Lamborghini in reality, so Fraser Fenwick again will just blend out of the throttle, let the GT3 cars go if they get there. And is Marcus Clutton going to get there? Not by the time they get towards Redgate Corner, but he will pick him off, I'm sure, down through the Craner curves, because whilst the Lamborghini is quick in a straight line, it hasn't got the same aero as the McLaren. So through goes Marcus Clutton. So the first overtake, the Audi going through, was for position. The second overtake was not for position. So that now means that Hugo Cook in the Audi, despite the spin from Peter Ursig, is now up into 3rd place overall. So that's been a really good recovery drive from Peter in his stint, and now Hugo Cook doing what he needs to do. Now the unusual thing with this is that there goes Marcus Clutton through Coppice Corner. The Audi that's ahead of him is the Audi that he has driven numerous times with good success last year, because Marcus Clutton was the pro driver for Peter Ursig last year. He is also the pro driver for Peter Ursig this year, but it's a clashing date for him, so he's partnered up with Simon Orange this weekend, and Marcus recommended Hugo Cook to take the drive in the Audi. and Hugo is doing a really good job in that car. Cayley's Porsche's been going well as well. It's in the hands of son Bill Cayley. So let's go down to the pit lane where Joe, I think, has managed to catch up with his father, James Cayley, who had a great stint in part 1.
Yep, I'm down here with James Cayley, who brought the Porsche down in the Group GTB lead. James, how was the first stint for you?
Really enjoyed it, absolutely loved it. It's our first 100-minute race, so first weekend in the season as well. We had a good 50-minute stint. I think it was quite eventful. There's a lot going on around us. There was only one of the car in GTB, so I wasn't sure how busy we were going to be, but yeah, I had a really busy, really good fun 50 minutes, I must say.
And I was going to say, first 100-minute race, I mean, how was your 50-minute stint?
It was good. I really enjoyed it. I got out of the car. I thought, what do I want to do another 50 minutes? Probably need to work my way up to that if I wanted to do, 2 sessions. But no, really good. Car was really good. Tyres held on well. Lap time sort of tailed off a little bit towards the end, and I sort of gave myself a bit of a talking turn. We got a few better ones in right at the end there, but yeah, lots of fun. I had a GTC behind me, had a good battle with him. We had a GTO in front of us. 3 of us had a good sort of 3-way battle early on in the session. And I think they both slightly got the better of me, but unfortunately the GTC had a little bit of a coming together with somebody else a couple of corners afterwards. But really good fun and really respectful racing from everybody that I was around. So yeah, really enjoyed it.
Well, thanks for your time, James, and I'll get back to watching Bill get on with the rest of the race. Thanks, James. Thank you.
Yeah, always good to have a chat with James and Bill Cayley. The Top Cats Racing somewhat troubled Lamborghini is in now for its 5th visit to the pit lane. Now, some of the earlier ones were for either stop-go penalties because of incidents out on circuit. We know one of them was for a drive-through penalty, but this one looks as though there's some sort of issue with the car because it's parked at 45 degrees directly outside its pit box, which does suggest that something has caused a bit of strife for George Jackson. However, the car is now being pushed back again, so Top Cats have been able to establish what the problem is, and George is hopefully going to get a gear hooked up and will continue in the race. It's a race of what could have been really for poor old Balsidou and George Jackson. Some of it not of their making, other bits as a result of them being deemed to be the culprit in incidents out there, and of course that bit of pit lane speeding as well. So that car is surely now going to drop probably down into 9th, if not 10th place. It is running in 8th when it came into the pit lane. Our race leader, Mark Smith, is now 40 seconds up the road from James Kell. He's still got work to deal with. That is getting past Doc Bush's Group GTC Porsche. Doc running in 13th place, 5 laps off the lead at the moment. And the deltas from Mark Smith, his last lap was a 1 minute 29.3. James Kell just at his best individual lap of the race in the second place car, 1 minute 26.4, so he was nearly 3 seconds quicker than the race leader last time through, with 22 3/4 minutes to go. And the rate of close for James Kell needs to be pretty much where he is at the moment. He's got to keep chipping away as much as he possibly can on the race leading Paddock Motorsport McLaren, which is just threading its way up the top section of the circuit as James Kell only now comes over the start-finish line in second place in the number 88 McLaren. It's McLaren, Audi, Lamborghini, McLaren, the top 6 at the moment. In fact, there's another McLaren if you want to add in David Brabham, who's there in 7th place. Porsche, Aston Martin and Lamborghini complete the top 10 because we have now seen Tom Canning's Feathers Motorsport Aston Martin move up to 9th as a result of that additional stop again for the Top Cats Racing Lamborghini of George Jackson, who has now dropped to the bottom of the top 10, and that is going to put them still second in Group GTC, but they are a long way adrift now of the sister car, the number 23 car that's in the hands of Fraser Fenwick. Fraser is on lap number 49. Only on lap number 47 is the sister car that runs second in that group, so 2 laps difference between first and second place in Group GTC. The fastest lap of the race has been settled in favour of Marcus Clutton, 1 minute 26.408 from Marcus Clutton, but the race was sort of undone a little bit with, first of all, that contact with Simon Orange and the puncture, limping back round to the pit lane to have the tyre sorted, and then of course that stop-go penalty as a result of being deemed the culprit for the contact that pitched Frank Morris in the 63 car into the spin. That 63 car still out there, but now in the hands of James Pickford. 21 minutes to go. Owen Hizzy turning his way through Coppice Corner, followed by Chris Murphy, and then our race leader Mark Smith, who will be focused on trying to scoop up the next two cars. But Mark Smith is hemorrhaging a bit of time here, really. The gap is down to 35 3/4 seconds. So do with just making sure he tries to minimise. You know, as a driver, you know, Mark Smith is not slow at all. He has had blistering pace all weekend, but you know, as a sporting driver, you're always going to have to give up time to the pro sporting drivers. By very nature, they're a category higher than you. They're going to be quicker than you, arguably. But what you do need to do is try and minimise the time. And if you can keep finding a pace that allows you to give up the time but still have the advantage at the end of what will be 20 minutes now, that's what you try and do. And if you lose a bit of time through the back markers, then you might push a little bit harder. So Mark Smith at the moment will want to lose as little time as he can getting past Owen Hizzy. Owen Hizzy will be well aware that a Group GT3 car is going to be much, much quicker than his Group GTH Ginetta. So he's not going to put up a fight, but he'll stay on the line he wants to. And Mark Smith will have to try and thread his way through and past. The last lap time from Mark Smith was in the 1:29s again, 1:29.7. But he did have 35.7 seconds between himself and James Kell. He's now only got 32.7 seconds between himself and James Kell. So again, James was about 3 seconds a lap quicker that time through. Have we got 10 laps still to go? Yes, we have. So what we're lapping up, 1:30. So we're going to have at least another 13 laps to go, maybe 12 laps to go. So the rate of close at the moment, based on the last few laps, will get James Kell right onto the coattails of Mark Smith if the rate of close remains the same. Any difference to that, either James Kell losing time or Mark Smith gaining time, is going to be advantageous or disadvantageous to one or other. So really do not know at this stage what the end of this race might look like. We'll keep an eye on it, keep an eye on that gap, because it has shuffled down by nearly 10 seconds in the last half a dozen laps or so. So here comes Mark Smith over the start-finish line again. 1:29s he's been lapping in. That was a 1:30, so that was one of his slower ones in the last few laps. And in about 30 seconds time, we'll see that green and orange McLaren head over the start-finish line. And that will be James Kell. Colin Turkington going well as well, so making his GT racing debut. And not quite the cut and thrust of the BTCC for Colin. So a far more relaxing weekend in some respects, and no pressure on him because he's been focused on championships for so long. Nice to him to sort of come in and relax and pick up the car from the man in the distance with the overalls around his waist, Patrick Collins. Such a shame that Patrick lost the time really in the gravel trap down there at the old hairpin through no fault of his own. The lead advantage has come down from 32.7 to 29.8 seconds, so it's still going the right way. Hugo Cook at the front of this queue of cars that's heading down in towards the braking area for the Fogarty S's. James Pickford, then Marcus Clutton. So it's the third place car that is being followed now by the car that's in 11th place, and then it's the car that's in 6th place. So this is all not for position, but we do now have a track penalty going in the direction of Marcus Clutton for track limits, I'm afraid. Simon Orange spoke pre-race about making sure they didn't pick up any track limit penalties. Well, on the totting up procedure, I'm not saying Marcus Clutton has done all of them. Simon might have picked up one or two, and then Marcus has picked up his first one. But yeah, your first one's free, your second one's a warning, the third one is into the pit lane for a 5-second penalty, and that, oh sorry, not into the pit lane, but a 5-second penalty will be added at the end of the race. So that is heading in the directions of Marcus Clutton. Now, the one good thing is that in a longer race, it doesn't have the same impact as it would in a short sprint race. So, at the moment, it is not going to affect the finishing position of the number 67 McLaren. It will still finish in 6th place overall and 5th in its group, that being Group GT3. So, Group GT3 cars 1st, 2nd and 3rd at the moment. The leading non-Group GT3 car is the Lamborghini of Fraser Fenwick, who currently is 4th overall and leading Group GTC. Group Group GTB is still being led by the number 80 Porsche, which is under attack from Hugo Cook at the moment. Under attack from Marcus Clutton, I should say, at the moment. Bill Cayley running around in 8th place. Group GTH is Tom Canning, as discussed, in the Feathers Motorsport Aston Martin. Group GTA is going to be Ian Astley at the wheel of the SVG Motorsport BMW M4. So those are your respective group leaders with 15 minutes remaining. And the race leader now on lap number 55. Last time we picked up the lead advantage was 29.8 seconds. Group GTO, as we say, being led by David Brabham, the pure carbon car, which was a bit of a late arrival at the team, so they focused on getting the car set up for the weekend and making sure that the prep was done, and then the focus will be turned towards getting it wrapped in some sort of colour before it heads to Brands Hatch. The lead advantage, I said, was 29 seconds. Well, it's now down to 25.9 seconds, so it's come down another 4 seconds since we last picked up on it, so 26 seconds, give or take the odd thousandth, to try and make up in 15 minutes. And James Kell is lapping still about 2 to 2.5 seconds quicker than the race leader. And at the moment, with 14 minutes remaining, he's not quite going to get there at the rate of close. So I think the pace that Mark Smith is able to maintain relative to the second place number 88 McLaren is sufficient at this stage. Now that is an overtake. That's Hugo Cook unlapping himself from the race leader. So Hugo Cook has now got himself back on the lead lap. Hugo is a pro driver, Mark is a sporting driver, so it's not unsurprising. Marcus Clutton, I think, will also unlap himself from one of the 2 laps that he is off the lead at the moment. So up towards Redgate Corner they'll go, and whilst up towards Redgate Corner goes the race leader, up towards Goddard's now goes the second place car, so I think the gap has come down further. And Marcus Clutton, even on the last lap, set the new fastest lap of the race so far, 1 minute 26.406. He was slightly slower than he'd been in the first and the second sectors, but he set an absolute best third sector. Lead advantage 22.4 seconds, so it comes down by 3.5 seconds that time through. So James Kell is throwing everything at it to see, I think, just where he is. Drive flat out, see where you are at the end of this race, and if you're close enough, you stand half a chance, but if you haven't driven flat out, you might kick yourself that you could have got there. There goes the hugely experienced David Brabham. David, of course, was a very quick driver when we saw him racing British Formula 3 back in the day, in a car that was it a Rolt? I think it was a Rolt that he used to race. Jewson backed car of David Brabham, I think it was. But yeah, David single seaters and then concentrated on sports car racing after his 2 seasons in Formula 1, was it? And then did great things in sports cars both in Europe and in America, and of course at Le Mans, of course, where he was successful. Right, race leader back over the start-finish line. Mark Smith starting to make decisive moves again on back markers. Almost ran out of room there, though, as he desperately tried to go through and ahead of Ray Harris and place a further lap on the Innovation Ginetta, but almost outbraked himself a little bit. So he'll have just lost a little bit of time there. His last lap time was 1 minute 29.7, so he completed the last lap well. I think it was just a bit too quick going in towards Redgate Corner that just lost him a bit of time there, but he can't really afford to lose a great deal of time. 12 minutes remain on the clock, and that's an off. George Jackson coming out of the old hairpin makes just light rearward contact with the barriers, and that is further problems, I'm afraid, for the number 16 Top Cats Racing Trade Nation backed Lamborghini Huracan. It's been a difficult race for them so far, with 3 trips to the pits for various penalties and problems of a mechanical nature that brought the car briefly back into the pits, as well as its mandatory pit stop, so it's clocked up 5 pit stops so far. The lead advantage now down from 22.4 seconds, it's now down to 19.5, so it came down by another 3 seconds on that lap, and the Lamborghini has not moved from where it came to rest down at the old hairpin. Quick replay of it. It just got, just sideways coming out, lost some rear traction, skittered across the dry grass, and, well, a lightish impact with the barriers, but it was a rearward impact, which is where all the business end of the Lamborghini is, so that won't have done the gearbox, the drivetrain, the engine a great deal of good, but the circuit furniture doing a good job of soaking up the impact and hopefully minimising any damage to that Lamborghini. Mark Smith goes past that point. The Lamborghini is still there, so that will just be covered by localised yellows. New fastest lap of the race came in on the previous lap for the car in third place, Hugo Cook, 1 minute 26.061 seconds from the third place Audi. And if you think that when this race got underway, Peter Ursig had dropped down to very last place in the Audi because of his spin at the first corner, and then was handed a bit of a lifeline because by the time he'd recovered, he'd lost so much time. He was way away from the chasing pack, but the safety car coming out at the end of that very first lap because of the stricken Mack Priestwood car down at the Melbourne hairpin, that allowed Peter Ursig to catch the pack. And I remember saying at the time, that's good news for him because it means that he's on the tail of the pack. They've got lots of overtaking to do, but they haven't lost as much time as otherwise they would have done. Peter then fully engaged race mode in his stint, carved his way through the order as much as he could, hands it over to Hugo Cook, who knows the Audi well, and that's problems for Marcus Clutton. The JMH Racing McLaren slowing out on circuit, and that's the car that was running in 6th position, and that is surely destined for the pit lane. I think he'll have enough power because it's downhill now all the way in towards pit lane entry, but Marcus Clutton coming in towards the pits. Now, is that a problem with the car? I'm surely it's not a miscalculation on fuel with 9 minutes to go, because that would be a very significant miscalculation from a very professional team, JMH Automotive. That is more likely to be some sort of mechanical issue. The team were expecting him. The air jacks it's going to go up onto because the airline goes in, and I suspect that may well be it because it's not exactly a hive of activity around the car, and I think Marcus is going to be climbing out, and that will be it. Yep, out comes Marcus Clutton, the familiar helmet, and I'm afraid that JMH Automotive and their number 67 McLaren are out of the race. Oh yeah, back to Peter Ursig, handing over the car to Hugo Cook. Hugo Cook fastest lap after fastest lap. They are third place overall now from being last at the very start of the lap. The lead advantage now down to 13.9 seconds with 8 minutes to go, just over. 5-second penalty going out of the way of car number 30, another car that hasn't had a great deal of luck for track limits. That is Ray Harris behind the wheel of the Innovation Racing Ginetta, but lost all of that time in the pit lane at the start of the race. Over the start-finish line now, that is now on to lap number 60, 6-0 for Mark Smith. He continues to lead the way, but the gap is now down to 10.2 seconds with 8 minutes to go. That lap from Mark Smith was a 1 minute 30.4. It was a 1 minute 26.8 from James Kell. So the rate of close now is sufficient enough for James Kell to get to the coattails of Mark Smith, surely by the end of this race. But how much is left in reserve for Mark Smith to be able to speed up? Looks as though the cause for concern is around the front left of the McLaren. And of course, that's where the damage was, wasn't it, when contact was made with Frank Morris and his Lamborghini in part one of the race when Simon Orange was behind the wheel of it. So maybe it's all tracing its roots back to that contact earlier on in the race. So there's the race leader in towards the Fogarty S's on the exhibition straight at the same time, but about to deal with the Group GTH Aston Martin of Tom Canning comes James Kell. The nose of the car dips. Remember, James claimed to win in the second of the 2 sprint races yesterday, whereas for Mark Smith, he's drove solo all weekend and finished 3rd and 2nd. Could he climb a step higher on the podium in this one? Well, we'll find out in the next 6.5 minutes, but the gap has been closing, and I'm sure Martin Plowman now and the team are on the radio to Mark Smith saying, anything you've got left, now's the time to use it. He works his way past the back marker, Ian Astley, in a straight line, so won't lose any time there. James Kell might just get held up behind Doc Bush heading in towards Redgate Corner, and that would be a good thing for Mark Smith. But James Kell, thought about diving up the inside, then realised the gap might close. The 10.2 second lead comes down to 7.3 seconds with 6 minutes to go. It was a 1 minute 30.084 from the race leader. 1 minute 27.1 from James Kell in second position. So still closing the gap, not to the same degree, but still nearly 3 seconds taken out, which means that in another 3 laps he's going to be there. And how many more laps can we squeeze out of this one? Probably 4 would be my guess. So rate of close should allow James Kell to get there. Can he get by? Catching is one thing, getting past is something entirely different. And the one thing you can guarantee is that Mark Smith will not make it easy. That will be the widest McLaren you will see on the Leicestershire, Nottinghamshire, Derbyshire border this afternoon here at Donington Park. So through the Fogarty S's, James Kell was 0.3 of a second slower through the first third of a lap, but was 0.5 of a second quicker through the second third of the lap once he'd got past the traffic of Doc Bush, who allowed him to go through at the Craner curves. So for Mark Smith, this is lap number 62 he is about to head on to. And with 5 minutes to go, what's he going to have? 3 more laps, I would have thought. 7.3 seconds becomes 6.2, so it didn't come down by much more. 1.1 seconds, far less than it's come down from on previous laps. That was a 1:28.4 from Mark Smith, fastest lap he's done in a long time. That's the radio message from Ploughy and the team coming in now. Get your foot down, anything you've got, absolutely use it. James Kell, slightly slower lap than he's been doing. It was a 1 minute 27.3 from him. So he will look to try and push ever more now. And just having a quick look, I thought I saw a tiny puff of smoke from the left rear of that McLaren on a couple of occasions. It might just have been a little bit of bodywork catching somewhere. You've still got something flapping underneath it, but that's been there for quite some time now. He passes Chris Murphy's BMW, which has been absolutely faultless since it suffered its drive shaft failure earlier on in the race, and the Woodbridge Motorsport team went to work. So 4 minutes to go. Group GTH still being led by the Feathers Motorsport, number 82, Aston Martin of Tom Canning and Archie Clark. So they are looking good potentially for their second group win of the weekend. Archie having claimed a win in the first sprint race of the weekend yesterday, and in the first ever Donington 100. Looks as though they are more than on course for a win in Group GTH here. Race leaders back over the start finish line. 6.2 seconds becomes 4.7 seconds. Mark Smith sets his best individual lap of the race so far. James Kell sets his best individual lap of the race so far. They are both pushing as hard as they possibly can. It was a quicker lap though from James Kell to the tune of 1.6 seconds compared to the race leader last time through. 1 minute 27.833 from Mark Smith, a 1 minute 26.265 from James Kell. So neither of them are leaving a great deal on the table. There's 3 minutes to go, which means they're going to be on their penultimate lap next time through, and James Kell is, I think, possibly just going to fall slightly short on this one, but you can see both of them on the straight at the same time. Any small mistake at all from either of them, and that is going to allow the pendulum to swing in the favour of one or the other as to who's going to claim victory here in the Donington 100. Round 3 of the 2025 GT Cup Championship, the first of 2 100-minute races that we will have in the season, because of course we also repeat this format when we go to Silverstone on the Grand Prix circuit on the 2nd and the 3rd of August. So up towards Goddard's, onto the penultimate lap of the race this time through. 4.7 seconds at the start of the lap. At the end of the lap, the 4.7 seconds diminishes down to 3.3 seconds. Only 2 laps to catch and no time now to get past. So James Kell has got to start to see if he can do a bit more. And problems for Chris Murphy. Oh no, surely not the same again. A drive shaft. He stops the car coming out of the Melbourne hairpin. That will be parked at the side of the car. He might have been better off just to let the car roll backwards and get it closer to the barrier if he could. That will still be covered by localised yellows, I'm sure, as was still George Jackson's car, which is still up against the barriers down at the old hairpin following his incident a while ago. But with now a little more than a lap to go, are we in for a grandstand finish? I just don't think James Kell can get there. He's now very much reliant on either a mistake from Mark Smith, and we've not seen really any of those over the weekend, or maybe meeting a back marker in the wrong place, but I'm not sure how many more back markers there will be for Mark Smith to deal with, because he is just working his way through the Fogarty S's. The next car he would catch up the road, I think he's just coming up to Goddard's, and that would be Colin Turkington at the wheel of the 24/7 Motorsport Ginetta. So I'm not sure there's going to be a great deal more traffic that the race leader will have to deal with. So Chris Murphy's car covered by local yellows. I think the race director is going to let it run the full distance, which would be great to see. Let's hope the checkered flag doesn't come out a lap early because of the position of Colin Murphy's car. No, we are going the full distance. 3.3 seconds comes down to 1.6 seconds. That's all there is between the pair of them. We've had 100 minutes of racing. We have had very little safety car. Remember, Mark Smith stopped in the pit lane for 20 seconds shorter than James Kell when he took over the car from his father Darren Kell. It was 168 seconds in the pit lane for the race leading car. It's 188 seconds for car number 88 that's there in second place. We're into the final few seconds of this one as they flick their way through the left-hander at Schwantz for the final time, up towards the right-hander at McLean's corner, and the gap has come down further. It's come down by another half a second just in the first sector of the lap, up towards Coppice corner. James Kell can sniff the win here. Mark Smith is feeling the pressure, but he can also get a full nostril of the win at least as well. They come down in towards the braking area for the Fogarty S's. And in the second sector of the lap, nearly 7/10 of a second quicker is James Kell. But time and overtaking opportunities are running out for James Kell. He's too far away as they come down in towards the braking area for the Melbourne hairpin. Mark Smith just needs to concentrate on the exit of that and making sure he's clean coming out of Goddard's, because James Kell is absolutely with him and he's almost trying to draw himself alongside. He looks one way, looks the other. He's going to have to go on the outside line heading up towards Goddard. Mark Smith grab the apex, get cleanly off the corner, but James Kell is trying to get the undercut coming out of the corner. The two of them come side by side over the start-finish line. Round 3, and the Donington 100 by 24 thousandths of a second goes the way of Mark Smith from James Kell. And wow, if that is what the Silverstone 100 is going to be like, we are in for an absolute belter. What a way to finish the weekend of GT Cup racing. I wasn't sure whether James Kell would come up short on one lap, and the next minute the Deltas tell you he's there, and wow, what a brilliant race between the pair of them. Through comes James Pickford. That car will finish in 8th place overall, and that will put them second in Group GTC. We'll wait for the next car to come over the start-finish line. I'm not entirely sure who it's going to be, the next car. It's going to be Hugo Cook, I think, possibly the next car over the start-finish line. And remember, the Audi was facing backwards at turn 1. Here comes Brent Millage. Well done to him for doing the whole stint on his own. Group GTH goes the way of Archie Clark and Tom Canning, who come through to finish in what is a solid 9th position overall in the win in Group GTH. And then the next car over the start-finish line will be the car that will finish, I think, in 3rd position. The Audi in the background of the shot will come through. Before that, though, we've got David Brabham coming through. That car will finish the McLaren as the winner in Group GTO. And there is the Audi. What a brilliant race and recovery drive from both Peter Ursig and Hugo Cook to put that car on the overall podium, having been dead last at the end of the first lap. And they come through to not only finish on the podium, set the fastest lap of the race as well. Colin Turkington about to take the checkered flag as well, as he came through at the wheel of the 24/7 Motorsport Ginetta. Oh my goodness, it flew by. It was a brilliant race, and at one point it looked as though Mark Smith was on for quite a substantive victory. But I always said, you know, no disrespect to Mark, he's a very quick driver, but the pro sporting drivers are always going to try and make up that time by very nature of they're higher graded than you. And what a grandstand finish. 100 minutes of racing, an hour and 40 minutes we've just had, and the win, 24 thousandths of a second. That's 0.024 of a second decided first from second place. There's going to be some big smiles on the podium. I think all of the cars are being directed to Parc Fermé, so I'm not sure whether either Dan or Joe or Charlotte are making their way down there. It'd be great to grab some reaction if we can from our drivers, but in the meantime, let's just confirm the results. Mark Smith claims the win by the blink of an eye from James Kell and Darren Kell, who finished in second place. Peter Ursig and Hugo Cook were third, and in fourth place it's the winning Group GTC for Fraser Fenwick and Ian Campbell. Andre Borodin and Ed Peed were fifth, ahead of Paul Bailey and David Brabham, who claimed honours in Group GTO in sixth place. And seventh place, the winners of Group GTB, Bill and James Cayley. Then it was Frank Morris and James Pickford who finished in 8th place. Archie Clark and Tom Canning finished 9th and picked up the win in Group GTH ahead of Mark Ellman and Owen Hizzy, who completed the top 10. In 11th position, it was Doc Bush. In 12th place, it was the winners of Group GTA, Neil Wallace and Ian Astley. Brent Millage drove solo, as did Doc Bush, but Brent Millage was 13th. Patrick Collins and Colin Turkington were 14th, ahead of the unfortunate Simon Orange and Marcus Clutton. George Jackson and Bal Sidhu had problems along the way to finish in 16th place, as did Chris Murphy, who was 17th. And then in 18th place, delayed and all of those laps lost at the start, Simon Griffiths and Ray Harris. Anybody else thereafter? Matt Eddles, Sam Mayer-Loughnan, ahead of Rupert Williams and John Ingram, Graham Tilley, Will Tregertha, and of course Lewis Tyndall and Mac Priestwood were all retirees in what was the opening race for the 100-minute formats here. And that also is our last race of the weekend in GT Cup. That was a fantastic way to end the weekend. And I think when we head towards Brands Hatch, hopefully we are in for another belting weekend from the GT Cup Championship. And we'll go back to the original format for Brands Hatch, where we'll have a sprint race, an endurance race on the Saturday, a sprint race, an endurance race on the Sunday. So for Brands Hatch, we're back to that familiar format. So, with the Donington 100 done, let's just look back at some of the highlights from the race we've just seen. So up towards the start-finish line, the lights went out. It was Simon Orange that was fighting away with Mark Smith for the lead of the race. Darren Kell managed to slot himself into second place. There was a spin in the pack for Hugo Cook. Thankfully, contact was avoided with the Audi. Graham Tilley, however, was delayed and had to take to the gravel as a result of that. Eventually digging himself out of the gravel was Peter Ursig. He had dropped to the very tail end of the field as a result of his spin. However, an early safety car would come out because of a Ginetta stricken down in the circuit, which allowed the rest of the field to catch up. Down in towards the old hairpin, it was a McLaren 1, 2, 3, 4 with the first of the Group GTC Lamborghinis of Ian Campbell slotting himself through into what would be a group leading position. But with that stricken car, as we say, of Mac Priestwood, and sitting there with broken rear suspension down at the Melbourne hairpin, there was little choice but to deploy the safety car. We gather that the suspension was broken as a result of contact somewhere on that formation lap between himself and the Innovation Motorsport Ginetta of Simon Griffiths, who had to bring his car in towards the pit lane. When we got the race back underway, of course, Graham Tilley was trying to carve his way back through the order. There was an off and into the gravel trap for the Jolt Motorsport McLaren Artura of Rupert Williams. His car would be pushed out by the marshals. A change early doors in the lead for Group GTC as Matt Iddles dived up the inside of Neil Wallace in the BMW to pick up the lead of Group GTA. But for Graham Tilley, his recovery through the order was short-lived. The car limping around in towards the pit lane area, and as we would hear from Graham later on, it was some sort of gearbox issue with the car or a clutch issue. They'll be back though, and stronger I'm sure, at Brands Hatch. Frank Morris had been held up behind James Cayley for quite some time in the Porsche. Eventually he was able to unlock the door, heading in towards the Melbourne hairpin. He had Simon Orange right behind him at the time, but as they came out of Goddard's, contact between the front of the McLaren pitched the Lamborghini backwards onto the grass. James Cayley had to avoid what was unfolding ahead of him. Took a while for the Lamborghini to get going again, but Simon Orange in the McLaren was deemed to be the culprit for that and would serve a penalty. The pit stop window then opened, and for the first time ever in GT Cup, refuelling was taking place. On board the number 247 24/7 Motorsport Ginetta jumped 4 times British Touring Car champion Colin Turkington. But problems continued to befall the number 67 McLaren. This time it was now in the hands of Marcus Clutton. The car starting to slow down out on circuit, and that would retire. But it was going to be a grandstand finish. Mark Smith had led pretty much every single lap. He is the sporting driver though. He'd got the pro sporting driver of James Kell behind him, who had been reeling him in lap after lap after lap. I was continually trying to calculate as to where they might end up and would he catch him? Well, yes was the answer. He had one last roll of the dice coming up to the final corner at the end of 100 minutes of racing. Looked one way, looked the other, braked as late as he possibly could, went wide into the corner to try and get the undercut on Mark Smith on the way out. They would sprint towards the line. Mike Smith would claim the win by 24 thousandths of a second in the Donington 100 round 3 of the championship.
Wow. So there we are. The cars are in the pit lane. And that is it from Donington Park. We won't be able to gauge any reaction from the drivers, but I'm sure you'll appreciate what a brilliant race that they had. So thank you, everybody, for watching. I hope you enjoyed our first 100-minute race. We'll be back, bringing you all of the live action from Donington Park, and the 100 format will be back in August. But Brands Hatch is the next event that we're at on the 17th and 18th of March. From Butte Motorsport, from GT Cup, from Donington Park, and from Onside Productions, and myself, Mark Werrell. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you again next time. Goodbye.